Hey guys, I'm Yuruzi. Part 4 of What If Naruto Was a Mimic Ninja. Sharingan, one of the most renowned doujutsu of the ninja world. In Naruto's world, its copying abilities may be pushed to the side thanks to one blonde ninja. In a ninja world just as technological as ours, Naruto will become a legend. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel and check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 11, Like Toy Shinobi. The first round of the Chunin exams are complete. Winner is Uzumaki Naruto, the mimic. The crowd roared and clapped with approval at the amazing battle. Naruto looked up at Genma oddly, who shrugged his shoulders. Congrats, kid. You've gotten yourself a nickname courtesy of me. Naruto continued to stare at Genma oddly before shrugging and walking forward. He smiled and raised his arms into the sky. I did it. The crowd roared in frenzy as Naruto continued to wave and smile. He turned around and slipped off the gloves, then clipped them back to his pants. Locating the stairs, he gave one last look at the medics that were carting away Niji before running towards the steps. As he walked up towards the contestants' box, he noticed how a lot of the crowd continued to clap for him, causing the boy to blush in embarrassment and laugh. Hee, I knew I was awesome, Naruto said as he reached the contestant box. Once he walked in, he immediately felt a hand on his shoulder, causing him to look around. Nice work out there, Naruto, Shikamaru said as he got off the wall he was leaning on, though now that you set the bar it's going to be hard to beat that performance. Man, now I'm going to have to try, so troublesome, Shikamaru sighed. Naruto laughed and punched the other boy's arm jokingly. Better make it a good match, man. I hear that your mom can be real crazy when you don't try, Shikamaru only sighed once more, and the two walked towards the other competitors. Back towards the Kage booth, Sarutobi was holding his head in deep thought. What in the world have you been doing over this past month, Naruto-kun? The Sandame thought. You are extremely lucky I didn't sick the umbu on you for using the Kyuubi's chakra. Thank Kami you were able to keep yourself under control. Unbeknownst to the aged Kage, the disguised Orochimaru was also having thoughts about the young blonde. Those moves are very interesting. With the boy's outrageous reserves and the power of the fox, Naruto could be S-class easily with the proper training, Orochimaru thought warily. If I bring Suki to me, I may have a chance to bring the boy too. However, if not, Naruto will no doubt scour the nations to find the girl. The snake Sannin leaned back and folded his hands on his lap. That transformation needs to be studied. If the Kyuubi weren't in you, Naruto, you may have been a good body to take over. At the very least you would make a good underling. While the two powerful ninjas were left to their thoughts, Naruto plopped himself down on a chair and let out a deep sigh of contentment. That last match really took a lot out of the boy. Shikamaru was leaning back on the chair next to the boy and glanced at Naruto. The match was strange. There were too many things that Naruto did that didn't make sense. Shikamaru had never heard of a ninja that could fly, but there is a huge world out there. Maybe there was a jutsu that allowed one to fly. But the odd thing about what Naruto did was that chakra he used. What was that orange and red chakra? Where did it come from? Where did that bloodlust come from, and where did it go after? Those were the questions that flew through the young genius's mind. Shikamaru had always seen how the villagers treated Naruto. The cold stares, the lack of acknowledgement, and the constant whispering was pretty hard to miss. Was it because of that chakra? The boy needed answers, and Shikamaru always figured out what he wanted. If only he had the time to truly think about what was going on. Luckily his match wasn't till Suki got here, so he had some time to dash. Because Uchiha Suki is not present still, we will be delaying her and Sabaka no Gaara's match. Will Aburame Shino and Sabaka no Kankuro please come down? I forfeit, Proctor. Kankuro yelled loudly, receiving a chorus of booing and an unseen glare from Shino. Forfeit? Why would the guy forfeit? He looks perfectly fine to me, Shikamaru thought with a frown. If that match is done and Gaara and Suki's match is delayed, that means dash. Nara, Shikamaru and Sabaka no Temari please come down to the floor. Genma yelled. Damn it. Shikamaru moaned loudly and rubbed his forehead. Why, oh why did that Uchiha have to be late? Now his pondering will have to be put on hold. Alright Shika, you hear that? You get to go earlier. Naruto grinned from beside the boy. Shikamaru sighed and pushed himself off his seat towards the rail where he leaned over it. Temari had already flew down using her fan to catch the air currents down to the floor. Maybe I can just forfeit. That puppet guy did so why can't I? Shikamaru drawled. The pineapple-headed boy heard a cry of outrage from behind and watched as Naruto rushed forward. How did he have energy already? Man, how troublesome. Don't even think about it, lazy ass. If Ino hears that you forfeit and I didn't stop you, she won't just beat your ass, she'll beat mine. Naruto cried. The Nara closed his eyes and sighed again. Meh, it's fine. This is too troublesome anyways. I don't want to be Chunin, you know. Silence greeted Shikamaru. Naruto. He opened his eyes and noticed the blonde was no longer by his side. Looking over his shoulder, he saw Naruto behind him in a crouched position with his fingers in a tiger seal. Naruto, what the fu dash? Konoha taijutsu no ugi, sennin garoshi. Naruto shot his fingers forward and then all Shikamaru saw was the sky spinning. Temari stood in the arena floor annoyed. Why did she have to fight this lazy boy? He had no motivation whatsoever. She was about to yell for the genin to get down when a scream of pain and rage cut her off. The scream attracted the attention of the restless crowd and they all turned to the competitor's box to see Shikamaru fly from the ledge to the floor. The boy landed in a heap, blowing up a cloud of dirt, and lay there for a moment groaning in pain. Temari blinked in confusion and wondered what happened. Her answer came when she saw Naruto poke his head out and wave. You're welcome, Shika. Go get her. Naruto yelled, grinning. The blonde grinned and looked to his side, seeing Shino and Kankuro giving him strange looks. What? It's a very easy technique. My sensei was a jerk and taught it to me through experience. I can teach you too if you want. Kankuro shook his head vehemently while Shino shook his head once. No thank you, Naruto. Shino said quietly, but if you really knew the boy you could hear the slight tremble in his voice. The sennin garoshi is indeed a disturbing technique. Naruto shrugged and looked back down towards the arena where Shikamaru was getting up. No offense to Shino, but Naruto wanted to go find Sakura and ask her how good he did. Plus he wanted to find Emi and Takuma. Besides, he didn't know that puppet user guy and it looked like Shino was glaring at the boy. Not something Naruto wanted to get into. So with a quick wave and an explanation of where he was going, Naruto bounded off. Shikamaru pulled himself off the ground while Naruto left to find his friends, so he missed the chance to glare at his blonde-haired friend. Oh, don't you worry, Naruto. Even a lazy guy like me revels in revenge, Shikamaru thought as he dusted his clothes off. The boy walked towards the center of the floor where Genma and Temari were waiting. Stretching a bit, he stopped in front of the Suna Kunoichi, who smirked at him. Ready to lose, you lazy excuse for a ninja? How troublesome, let's just get this over with. Round 2 of the Chunin exams, begin. Shikamaru instantly pulled out a few kunai from his pouch and launched them at Temari. The girl scoffed and opened her fan a little so she could blow them off course. Her eyes widened when she saw a shadow moving towards her while her attention was focused on the kunai. Shit, a distraction. Temari jumped high into the air to avoid the shadow and opened her fan all the way. She glided above Shikamaru and then jumped off while snapping her fan close. With a mighty yell, she fell down upon the boy wielding the fan like a club. Shikamaru cursed and cancelled his jutsu so he could jump away. Luckily he did, because the impact made by Temari's fan caused a small crater that made cracks appear on the ground. That thing can knock my head off my shoulders. Pulling a handful of shuriken, he lobbed them at the Suna princess and watched as she dodged them. Temari then shot a stream of wind with her open fan at him, making him jump out of the way again. Hiding in the trees, Shikamaru took a few deep breaths and contemplated the situation. Okay, so she seems to be smart and knows my moves. If I can catch her off guard, then I can take her down with my Kage main. If not, then I can surprise her with my new move. Judging the time of the day, Shikamaru calculated the length of the shadow the trees gave and how far his shadow would extend. Making his hand sign, he let his shadow go and it crept across the ground towards Temari. Temari narrowed her eyes at the trees and was about to attack when she saw Shikamaru's shadow head for her again. Jumping back, she bit back a curse as it meandered back and forth like a snake trying to snag its prey. Finally the black line stopped and Temari smirked before using her fan to carve a line signifying the limit. Looks like that's all you can do, punk. No answer came from Shikamaru as he continued to analyze the situation. His thoughts were cut short as another blast of wind from the Suna ninja was sent hurtling at him. For more blasts of wind flew through the trees, making the lazy genius jump around frantically. I need to catch her off guard again, but how? Thinking quickly, Shikamaru pulled off his vest and tied a kunai to it, making it into a makeshift parachute. Waiting for another wind blast, Shikamaru threw the parachute in the air just as the wind picked up, making his idea fly high above. Quickly using Kage Main, he sent his shadow towards Temari, hoping to catch her before his chakra ran out. Temari watched as the shadow came curving at her again and shook her head. Why was the boy trying again? She had already found the length that the shadow could reach, so what was the point? Her instincts primed through ninja training made her jump back quickly, saving her from being caught in the now longer than she thought shadow. What the hell? Looking around, she spotted a part of the shadow that was thicker and looked up. Above the jutsu was Shikamaru's kunai and parachute combo, which gave him the extra shadows to lengthen his. That boy is smart, I'll give him that. However, I'm not done yet, Temari whispered as she dodged to the side and spun in the air. Kamaitachi no jutsu. A torrent of wind swept over the arena, causing a cloud of dust to be picked up. Shikamaru jumped from the trees and away from the devastation that riddled the forested area. He looked at the damage with frown and looked back to the girl. Troublesome blondes, all of you, I swear, Shikamaru said, rubbing his neck. Slowly but grudgingly, the boy went into his back pouch and pulled out a lone kunai. On the handle was a piece of paper with writing on it. Can't believe I have to use this, man, so troublesome. Up in the stands, Naruto decided to go see if he could find some people he knew. As he walked through the seats, he heard his name being called over the loud talking from the crowd. Naruto-kun. Hey Naruto-kun, over here. Naruto turned his head to see Emi and Takuma smiling and waving at him to come over. Grinning, Naruto bowed over to the siblings. Emi gave Naruto a quick hug and Takuma patted his back after making the boy blush in embarrassment. He still wasn't used to this kind of positive attention. That was a great match, Naruto. I couldn't believe you could use those gloves to such an amazing extent, Takuma said with a smile. Well, yeah. Haha, I got the idea from a character named Suna. Takuma nodded but then looked serious for a moment. But is it okay to be using IT's power? Naruto nodded confidently. As long as I stay in control, I will be fine. If I can do that, then I can keep hyperform up. Using my own chakra is a different story, since I will be using my own energy. Well, you have to admit that those techniques are amazing, Emi stated. Naruto smiled and rubbed the back of his head. Haha, thanks Emi-chan. Well, I am going to try to find my teammate, so I'll talk to you guys later. Naruto waved goodbye and started to run down the stairs, trying to find any sign of Sakura. She had pink hair, how hard could it be? Seeing a flash of that exact color, Naruto rushed down the stairs and found Sakura sitting next to Ino with Kiba and Hinata beside them. Hey look, it's Naruto. Kiba pointed at the smiling blonde and stood up to pat the other boy's back. Man, that was a great match. I still can't believe you beat Niji. Gee, good job, and Naruto-kun, Hinata said blushing. You did really good out there, Naruto. You pulled some crazy stuff out there, stated Ino. Yeah, how did you do all that, Naruto? The new moves, that strange form, and heck, you even flew. Sakura wondered. Haha, ninja secret, Sakura-chan. Naruto. Naruto gulped and scratched his cheek. Giving a brief explanation wouldn't hurt, and if he didn't, he might get hurt for teasing the pink-haired girl. As long as he strayed away from the Kyuubi, he would be fine. Well, some of those moves were based off of heavy chakra usage, like my speed and Sharingan. Especially the Sokatsui. Other than that, it was just my henge. Sakura looked at the boy, amazed at his progress. Naruto was getting so much stronger. What about her? Seeing Naruto push himself to get stronger was really making her feel like she needed to push forward. If Naruto is strong and Suki is too, then I need to push myself even more. For my team. I still don't get how your henge works. Kiba said. It almost reminds me of my Jujin Bunshin, where Akamaru turns into me, right buddy? Akamaru barked in agreement in Kiba's jacket and tilted his head curiosity. Naruto shrugged. I don't know enough about your family techniques to compare, Kiba. In simple terms, let's just say my henge transforms the reality of chakra and transforms the reality of my physical body, to a certain point at the moment, Naruto said the last part quietly. He was still having trouble with changing his body, or physiology as Ero Sennin put it, and just couldn't get his whole body completely different yet. Hyper Naruto was the closest he has gotten to changing his whole body since, unlike the illusion to reality henge, the body henge didn't need a continuous amount of chakra to keep up, and hyper form didn't have a lot of difference to a normal body. All it needed was the amount of chakra needed to transform and he was set. Like his rubber moves. Once the arm was rubber, he found that a constant stream of chakra was no longer needed. Although even though he didn't need to keep using chakra to keep the henge, hyper form was a special case due to him needing to constantly use chakra to attack. Though both types of transformation did take concentration to keep up. That was why the illusion to reality transformations was both easier and harder at the same time, Naruto thought. Easier in a sense that with his shadow clones the sky was limit to what he could do with them since they were made of pure chakra. For him, he needed to be perfect in how the illusion over him was created. His bird transformation was the perfect example. The chakra covering him had to be done perfectly. Fake wings, fake hollow bones, everything fake was made of chakra and needed to be constantly supplied with it. Being a freaking shuriken was easy compared to animals. Kiba, with his extra sensitive hearing, heard the last part but didn't comment. It was true that his family's jutsu weren't a huge secret, but they were pretty well guarded, so it was no wonder Naruto had any information on them. But still, what was up with that crazy evil feeling red chakra had for a while? There was no way he was imagining that. Saving that thought for later, Kiba turned his thoughts to what Naruto had looked like during the final part of the match. He knew where it came from, but the answer was just out of his reach. "Hey Naruto, what was that thing you did at the end?" Naruto grinned broadly and crossed his arms. "That was my hyper form. I've been working on that forever. It allows me to FL dash. That's it." "Now I know where you got that from," Kiba exclaimed. Naruto laughed and scratched his head. "So you figured it out, huh? Well, you could say that in that form I'm reborn, yeah?" Kiba shook his head and chuckled. He knew he would figure it out. It all looked very good, and Naruto-kun, Hinata said with a large blush starting to appear on her face. "I can't believe I said that. What if he thinks I'm weird for saying that?" Naruto laughed and patted Hinata's back and pulling the girl into a friendly hug, making the girl turn bright red. "Thanks, Hinata. I hope you enjoyed the match, and I hope Niji and you get along now since you guys." "Hinata? Oi, what happened? Hinata, are you okay?" Hinata had passed out with a smile due to the contact of Naruto touching her. Is she sick?" "No Naruto, she is fine," Sakura sighed. "So dense. Shouldn't you head back to the competitor's box?" "Oh yeah, I got to go. I can see Shika's match way better from there anyways." "Oh, looks like he is starting to do something big, so I better go. See ya." And with that, Naruto ran back. Outside of the trees, Temari stood with her fan out and tried to spot the Nara. Not seeing any sign, she growled and stuck her fan in the dirt. Shikamaru was closing his eyes, finalizing his plan. "I only have one shot at this, so I need to maneuver her into the right spot, then capture her. If this works, then I will only need 3 minutes." Shikamaru readied his arm and narrowed his eyes. "Starting now. If you won't come out, then I'm going to flush you out." Temari yelled, getting ready to bite her thumb. The sound of an object flying through the air made her jump forward so that she could dodge a kunai that lodged itself into the ground. Temari's eyes widened when she saw a tag on the kunai, and she rolled to the side thinking it was an explosive tag. When nothing happened, she stood up quickly and readied her fan. A dud? Then it was a distraction. Where is he then? A salvo of shuriken made the girl open her fan to blow them back, but she cursed and jumped away as she saw a shadow heading towards her. The shuriken stuck beside her and she stood with her fan out, growling. This boy was annoying her with his tricks and making her look like a fool. Settling down, Temari stuck her fan in the ground and bit her thumb once more, readying her finishing technique. However, a hissing sound made her stop and she looked over her fan at the kunai that was still in the ground. It wasn't a dud, it was a hand seal activated tag. But the explosion shouldn't hurt me too much when I'm behind the fan. Why would he set it off now? Suddenly, and much to her surprise, a flash of light blinded her and much of the crowd. When the light died down, Temari felt a kunai against her back and she froze in shock. Turning around, she was astonished to see the lazy ninja with his knife pointed at her back and half his body sticking up out of a shadow next to her like he was in water. How? Well, it was troublesome to do, but all my attacks were leading you to the exact spot I wanted you to, Shikamaru said as he slowly rose from the shadow till he was completely out of the ground. Temari chanced to look over her fan and saw a shadow leading from the shadows of the forest that connected into a line that went from the shadows of the kunai with the tag to the shuriken and curved to a shadow behind her. Looking up slowly, she gasped as she saw the makeshift parachute that he had thrown earlier. The shadow line started to recede towards the Nara as he looked down at the Suna ninja with his kunai pointed at her throat now that he was standing. But how did you get behind me? A new form of Shunshin? Shikamaru scoffed at that. Moves like that are such a drag to use for me. I used the Kage Sanpo, Shadow Walk. I can move through my shadow from one point to another without having to rush. Plus I'm sucked into it so I won't be seen. Shikamaru looked into the sky at the clouds and sighed. If only he was like a cloud, he wouldn't have to deal with the exams. I got you in 2 minutes and 42 seconds once I initiated my plan. You lose, checkmate, winner Nara Shikamaru. Ginma yelled and the crowd erupted in applause. The kid is smart just like all Naras. But to be able to use the Kage Sanpo no Jutsu at such a young age. How amazing! Ginma looked over to the box where the Chunin examiners were and nodded. Izumo and Kotetsu saw the nod and wrote on their clipboards, "Looks like we might have 2 new Chunins, Izumo." Kotetsu grinned. That Nara kid is smart, that's for sure. Plus he manipulated his opponent in exactly the way he wanted while also doing it in a time frame he seemed to want. Quite amazing. Shikamaru walked up slowly towards the competitor's box where Naruto was waiting with a grin. The blonde quickly ran to the boy and grabbed him by the neck and rubbed Shikamaru's head. That was awesome, Shika. I didn't know you knew such a cool move like that. Man, I wish could move through the shadows like you, Shikamaru grunted and pushed Naruto off. Too bad it is a bloodline, or I would totally like to learn it. Shikamaru looked at Naruto oddly before chuckling. Naruto, you can fly already and move at amazing speeds. I can't see you using the Kage Sanpo, seeing as how it requires patience and planning. Naruto pouted and crossed his arms. Still would be fun to learn. Naruto gestured for them to head more inside where they stood next to Shino. Temari had walked back up the other way and was now standing by her brother, glaring holes into the pineapple-haired boy. If looks could kill, Shikamaru would be in the 9th level of hell. It's fine, Temari. Just focus on the plan, Kankuro whispered. Whatever. I just can't believe I lost to him, Temari growled. She then looked at her youngest brother and shivered. Gaara was getting antsy. The Uchiha still wasn't here and she could tell that the Jinchuriki was looking for blood. Naruto was also thinking on the whereabouts of Suki. They pushed her match back already, going back 2 matches in fact. Naruto didn't think they could go anymore. Just then Ginma called for Gaara and Suki to the floor and Naruto saw his fellow demon container Shunshin to ground in a swirl of sand. He hoped the girl would come soon or she would be really disqualified. Ginma looked at his wrist regarding the watch with a frown. He would give the Uchiha 5 more minutes. If she wasn't here then he couldn't do anything else but disqualify her. Looking at the small sand ninja, Ginma sighed and looked once back to the crowd. Due to Uchiha Suki still not being here, I have no choice but to dash. A gust of wind stopped the examiner mid-sentence and he turned his head to the source of the wind. A whirlwind of leaves blocked Ginma's vision, but once they settled there standing tall was Uchiha Suki and Hitaki Kakashi. We're not late, are we? Kakashi said sheepishly. Ginma sighed and shook his head. Just made it in time, took you long enough. Kakashi scratched the back of his head and I smiled. Well, looks like we just made it in time then, Suki. Suki's eye twitched and she glared up at her teacher through her bangs. Proctor-san, how late are we? Suki grit out without looking away from Kakashi. We pushed your match back, twice. Suki almost screeched at her silver-haired sensei but kept her calm, though her eye continued to twitch dangerously. But you're here now, so let's get this match started. Kakashi-san, if you would. Kakashi nodded and left the ground in a puff of smoke and leaves. Suki looked up and noticed a flash of blonde in her vision. It was Naruto waving his hands and arms trying to get her attention. She smirked slightly and gave him a nod. Naruto noticed that his teammate finally spotted him and grinned. He was glad she was finally here and wasn't disqualified. He also noticed that she looked so much different with her new wardrobe. She now had on black collared sleeveless top that showed more of her stomach than the last shirt, which was still covered in mesh. Both her arms sported fingerless arm gloves that clung to her skin and went to her elbows. Her left arm had an elbow guard above the glove for extra protection. Suki's old shorts were replaced by a skirt that stopped at the thighs and were cut on the sides to allow more movement. From her thighs down she had white stockings that were tucked into black ninja sandals. All in all, for Naruto, Suki looked much more feminine and let her growing curves show. She actually looked a lot cuter, not that he would ever say that. Like hell he would. Ever. Suki rolled her shoulders a bit and stared at her opponent. The red-haired boy looked the same as he did a month ago, those same cold eyes staring at her, dead looking above all else. Genma held his hand in front of the two and looked back to his Kage. With a nod from the aged leader he lifted his arm. Begin. Suki immediately pulled out a round of kunai and lobbed them at Gaara. Just as she expected, sand poured from the gourd on his back and shot in front of him to block the kunai. Rushing forward she started to try and hit the boy with taijutsu, but the sand kept blocking her. In the stands, Kakashi appeared on the stairs next to the row Sakura was sitting in. The pinkette yelped at the sudden entrance of her sensei before glaring at him. Kakashi-sensei, where have you been? Ma, sorry Sakura, but we had some last-minute business to deal with, Kakashi said while smiling. Your tardiness is a cloud over the shining youth of your students, Kakashi. Kakashi sighed inaudibly and turned around. You say something, Guy? Ga, curse you Kakashi and your hip attitude. Guy cried out. Sakura looked over to the eccentric sensei and saw Lee standing next to him leaning on a crutch. Lee looked over to the girl and smiled slightly, a complete contrast to his usual exuberant self. Hello Sakura-san. We were hoping to get here earlier to see Naruto and Niji's fight, but I guess we missed it. Oh man, you guys missed it. Ino said, leaning over Sakura so she could talk to the three new arrivals. Naruto was awesome out there. He beat Niji and showed some awesome moves. Yeah. Kiba joined in while laughing. Who would have known that the dead last could fly? Fly? Kakashi thought. You missed Naruto's fight, sensei, Sakura said disappointedly. I bet he would have liked it if you and Suki were here. Kakashi chuckled nervously and rubbed his neck. He knew he should have been here sooner, but it was a pretty long trek to get here from those cliffs. Kakashi could feel Sakura's eyes still on him and he held his hands up in placating motion. Now Sakura, I'm sure he did fine without me. Besides, I'll make it up to you two later. For now let's just watch Suki's fight. Sakura stared at her sensei for a moment longer before looking back. Even if Suki wasn't Sasuke, Sakura still cared for the other girl. Sakura clenched her hands in worry. Gaara was a monster. What he did to Lee was inexcusable. What if he did that to Suki? What if it wasn't just an arm or leg? Kakashi saw the girl's worry and patted her shoulder. Don't worry Sakura, Suki will be fine. How can you be so sure? Just watch. Suki, who had been smashing away at Gaara's shield of sand, smirked as she decided to take the fight up a notch. Back-flipping from a tendril of sand, the girl rushed forward once more and lashed out with a punch. Just as her fist was about to hit the sand, her form blurred from view and she appeared behind Gaara. What? Gaara whispered. His sand barely made it in time to block before Suki blurred away again and attacked from the side. This back and forth lasted a few minutes before the girl was finally able to beat the sand and she smashed a foot into Gaara's face, sending him tumbling across the ground. Humph, is that all you have? Suki said mockingly as she got into a fighting stance. That is my Gukken. Lee said, shocked. How? What better fighting style to teach her than the one that first injured Gaara? Kakashi stated, still looking down. Don't get me wrong, you are still far ahead of her due to her having to use chakra to augment her muscles so she can move that fast, but with this fighting style she has a chance to win. Lee looked down at the arena from Kakashi and felt a sense of melancholy. Suki, you truly are a genius. To even get this far with Gukken in just a month. And Naruto. The one who defeated my rival. Lee sighed. Will I ever be able to fight again? Naruto was standing with his arms over a ledge watching the beginning of the fight so far. He was quite surprised to see Suki able to move at high speeds, but he guessed Kakashi had to give her something to get past the sand. Shikamaru and Shino stood next to him, both looking at the fight with differing levels of interest. Shikamaru was casting glances at the two Suna ninjas and frowning. They are up to something, he whispered quietly. Who? Shikamaru looked down to Naruto, surprised that the blonde heard him but waved it off. He must have been louder than he thought. Those Suna ninja. They keep whispering and looking around. Almost like they are expecting something. I agree, Shino put in. They are too wound up. My bugs sense unease in their behaviors. We'll have to keep an eye on them. Don't drop your guard. Naruto blinked and nodded before looking back to Suki's fight. What could be going on? Suki cartwheeled out the way of a wave of sand and blurred forward once more, striking Gaara in the stomach and following up with a kick to the side that was interrupted by sand. Backing off once more, Suki closed her eyes for a moment and gathered her chakra. Sharingan. Opening her eyes once more, Suki revealed the red orbs of her family's doujutsu, both eyes now with two spinning tomos. With renewed vigor she rushed forth and elegantly dodged the sand tendrils that went for her. Gaara growled lowly and held his hand in front of him. Sand gathered and formed, making a copy of the Jinchuriki. The Sunabunshin swung a sand arm at Suki, who ducked under it and started for the original. However, she had jump out Hiwei as the clone brought a sandy leg up towards the girl's chin. With a growl, Suki placed her palms on the leg and vaulted herself up. Sticking to the leg with chakra, she spun on her hand while throwing her legs into a split. Her foot smashed into the fake Gaara's face and the sand head blew apart. Suki finished her spin and pushed off the sand to land in crouch before the clone could reform itself. Not letting herself stay still for long, Suki blurred again and appeared in front of Gaara. Gaara was expecting another taijutsu attack, but his pale green eyes widened in shock as Suki went through a chain of hand seals at an amazing pace. Large fireball down at point-blank range. The fire jutsu consumed the boy. Fire died down. A glass statue of Gaara was left standing there. The glass shattered and fell to pieces and Suki recoiled in shock. A sound behind the girl made her spin to see that the clone she had taken care of was now replaced by the crazed form of Gaara. Yes, yes! Mother will have your blood! Gaara screamed as he lifted his arms. A wall of sand rose up to surround Suki, and when she looked up she was to run out. Suki looked around frantically but saw no way out of the sand wall. She had to break through. Hopefully this will get me through, Suki thought as she hurriedly went through seals. Die for mother! The sand spike completed and shot down at Suki, who completed her seals and looked up with her Sharingan spinning. Suki! Naruto screamed out as the sand spike fell upon his teammate. The boy gripped the rail, causing it to groan and leave indents in the metal. Naruto's whole body was tense and his eyes were wide with fear. Shikamaru gripped his friend's shoulder tightly to reel the boy back in. Naruto, calm down, this is Suki we are talking about. The Uchiha Suki, I'm sure she has a plan, Shikamaru said through clenched teeth. Though even he was worried, that last attack looked too hard to escape through just speed. He could have used Shadow Walk to escape, but Suki, or her teammate. Her screaming was stopped as she felt a hand pat her lightly on the head. She prepared for this. Just then the wall of sand that once surrounded Suki melted into glass as fire erupted around the spike just as it was about to pierce inside of the circle of glass. The spike that was raised high to kill Suki turned to glass also, and the wall shattered into pieces. As the pieces fell, they reflected a shining light coming from Suki. Circling the girl was a long-bodied dragon made of red-hot flames. Its eyes shined white with power. It spun around the girl protectively, its whole body going from Suki's feet to the top of her head. The dragon stopped spinning for a moment and lifted its head high to stare at the shocked Gaara. It roared and then continued to spin, but at a much slower pace. Katon, Karyu Engo, Fire Style, Fire Dragon Protection, Suki said as she looked at her opponent with her head held high. You're finished now. Gaara stared at Suki before he slowly broke out into maniac grin. Yes, yes, this is what mother wants. You are strong, mother wants your strong blood, mother wants you. Gaara threw his arms out and let out waves of sand towards Suki. Suki scoffed and dodged to the side, her Sharingan allowing her to predict the movements of the sand. Suddenly a whip of sand from behind made her look back in alarm. However, the fiery dragon around her roared and lashed out at the sand in an explosion of fire, easily turning the grains into glass. Suki smirked and then ran forward. Using her speed, Suki got close to the green-eyed boy and started to rain down on him with vicious taijutsu attacks. Whenever she threw a punch, a part of the fire that surrounded her body would fly with her fist and either melt the sand or burn the boy it was trying to protect. A brutal uppercut laced with fire sent Gaara flying into the air where a pillow of sand caught him. He got up quickly and made the sand cloud shoot down pellets of sand at Suki. Suki growled in frustration as she dodged as much as she could and let her Karyu Engo take care of what she couldn't. Though even with her fire defense, some shots of sand still impacted her body, causing her to yelp in pain. There were just too many. Hoping to get the boy down, Suki used Kagebyo to get behind Gaara, who blinked in surprise. Katon, Shurshur Rindan, Fire Style, Lion Barrage. Suki yelled as she delivered her taijutsu combo accompanied with fire to Gaara, sending him to the ground. The boy fell to the ground with a grunt and Suki landed gracefully. She pulled a shuriken from her pouch and quickly attached ninja wire to it. Spinning it around quickly, she zeroed in on the recovering Gaara. I want to end this now, so if you don't mind, I'm going to finish this. Suki spun the wire-attached shuriken quickly before launching it towards Gaara. Karyu Engo Tama, Fire Dragon Protection Shot. As Suki yelled the name of her technique, the fire dragon that was circling her sprang onto the wire and followed down to the shuriken till its head inking, white-hot shuriken in its mouth. Gaara looked on as the great construct of fire bore down at black smoke covered the area where Gaara once stood. Suki smirked and turned around thinking she won when a gasp from the crowd made her spin around. In the wake of the destruction she caused stood an orb of sand, a good portion of it melted into glass. However, the glass was shattered off and replaced with more sand to make the orb perfect. Suki looked in shock at the globe and narrowed her eyes. How did he block that? How the hell did he block that? Suki yelled in her mind. She ran forward at a cautious pace but had to jump backwards to avoid being impaled by a spike of sand that shot from the orb. That defense was incredibly strong. It looked like Kakashi was right, she had to use it. Suki back-flipped onto the wall and continued to till she was high above the floor. Flipping through hand seals, she threw her left hand down to the wall and grasped her wrist. Chakra burst forth around her hand as lightning erupted from her fingers. A ring electricity revolved around her feet, feeding the lightning chakra around the girl's hand as the sound of birds chirping echoed across the arena. Really, Kakashi? To have taught the girl that jutsu, Guy said as he looked at Suki. Everyone's attention was focused on the eccentric Jounin as he stroked his chin. What jutsu are you talking about, Guy-sensei? Sakura asked as she shifted her eyes back and forth between Suki and Guy. Kakashi's original technique, it is used as an assassination jutsu. Even though it may sound loud, the jutsu is extremely powerful. Essentially, it is basically a strong chakra encased thrust of lightning chakra, but what truly makes this move dangerous is its piercing power. To use the jutsu effectively, you need to be able to move at incredible speeds, but the speed you must move at is a liability thanks to the tunnel vision that is suffered. That is why you need to be able to predict how the enemy moves. But if it has such a dangerous drawback, then what is the use? Ino asked. You must have the predicting capabilities of the Sharingan. The genin nodded as they realized why Kakashi would teach it to Suki. What a powerful jutsu. Yes, it is, Guy said. With the power to even cut lightning itself and giving a death accompanied by the sound of birds chirping. Thus rightly named. Suki grinned as the jutsu came to full power and she pulled her arm back, while also ripping apart the wall she stood on, and bolted down the wall. Her speed picked up steadily as she ran down to the ground and continued to grow as she flew across it towards the sphere of sand. Her left hand gave off a trail of lightning as Suki held it behind her, the sound of birds chirping screeching out. Suki's Sharingan spun as she got closer to Gaara's defense and she dodged the sand spikes that came out to stab her. With a mighty scream she thrust her arm forward and pierced right through the compacted sand like a hot knife through butter. Chidori, 1,000 birds. Silence met Suki's scream of her jutsu as the crowd stared in awe at the amazing spectacle. That silence was broken by a scream filled with pain and madness that Suki recoiled. Blood! My blood! Gaara screamed from inside the ball. Suki pulled her arm out of the sand with a pained grunt and watched as the sand fell away, leaving a screaming Gaara who clutched his shoulder. An ominous pressure fell upon the stadium as Gaara's screams escalated. Naruto flinched at the feel of the chakra that washed over the stadium and shouted in alarm. Shit, something's happening. He turned to the side to see a horrified expression on both Temari and Kankuro. This was not good. Up in the Kage booth, Sarutobi slowly turned to side and his eyes met with the only other person sitting down. The two guards of the Kazekage that were wrapped in a cloak shifted and two figures burst from each cloak and jumped to the roof of a separate building. An explosion occurred and knocked the bodyguards of the Hokage off their feet while Orochimaru threw off his disguise and grabbed Sarutobi from behind and put a kunai to his throat. The snake Sannin brought the aged Hokage with him to the building where he stood in the middle of his four-sound ninja. Do it. Yes, sir. Fuin, Shishianjin, Sealing Art, for Violet Flame Encampment. The sound four said simultaneously. A purple box appeared around Orochimaru and Sarutobi, who kicked his old student off of him. Oh ho, looks like the old man still has some fight in him. Sarutobi growled and threw off his Kage robes, revealing his battle armor underneath. I had a feeling this would happen, my former student. To think that you would sink this low as to attack the village of your roots. Orochimaru cackled in response. By the time I'm done there will be no village left. Naruto panicked as he saw the explosion in the Kage box. He turned quickly to see siblings of Gaara jump down to the arena, and he growled as he got ready to jump after them while transforming his arm. I'm not letting you guys get away. Naruto yelled, not noticing as glowing feathers started to fall around him. Gomu Gomu, no. The blonde's eyes started to droop as he swayed and fell back. What's happening? I'm getting sleepy. Naruto couldn't keep his eyes open any longer, and he let the blissful touch of sleep consume him, unaware of the destruction that started to break out around him. Konoha began to fall in chaos. Chapter 12, I will lead you out of the dark. So what will it be today? Give me 2 miso ramens and keep them coming. Haha, you got it, Naruto. Tsuchi started working on the ramen while Ayam leaned against the counter staring at the blonde boy. Naruto grinned back and grabbed a pair of chopsticks before breaking them apart with a loud snap. So how have you been, Naruto-kun? Ayam asked. Pretty good, Ayam-chan. I've been training a lot so that I can become a good Hokage. I'm going to take that hat someday, you know. Ayam giggled and then placed 2 steaming bowls of ramen before the boy. Naruto felt a bit of drool pool in his mouth before he gulped it up and placed his hands together. Itadakimasu. Just as Naruto was about to dig in, Ayam cleared her throat. Naruto looked up and quirked his head. Anything wrong, Ayam-chan? Well, it's just. Yeah, how can you become Hokage if you don't wake up? Naruto brought his head back in surprise before laughing. That's real funny, Ayam-chan. Wake up? Why would I need to if I'm already awake? Wait, Ayam, you shouldn't be doing that, Naruto said, directing his gaze to her hands, which were placed in a ram seal. You aren't a ninja, so if something goes wrong, I don't want you to get hurt. Things started to blur around Naruto and the boy looked around frantically. What? Hey, what's going on? Ayam, quit it. Wake up, Naruto-kun. Please. Naruto opened his mouth, but a booming voice that seemed to echo made him recoil. Kai! Naruto's eyes shot open and he sat up with a loud scream. Naruto, get up. Konoha is under attack. Naruto heard someone say, but his eyes were still blurry and he was still groggy. Shaking his head roughly, Naruto was able to distinguish the blurry shapes around him. Sakura was looking down at him with a worried frown while Shikamaru had his eyes constantly darting back and forth with his hands in his pocket. What's going on? Naruto said wearily as he pushed himself up. Oto has attacked us and Suna has decided to betray us, Sakura replied. Someone put a very strong genjutsu over the arena and made almost everyone fall asleep. You weren't waking up right away. Naruto cracked his neck and looked around. Everywhere he looked, ninja darted around the crowd fighting in their own battles. His eyes started to widen in alarm as the weight of events started to dawn on him. Konoha was in peril. Naruto cursed loudly and spun in place, taking everything in. His hands tightened in anger and he ran to the rail he was about to jump off of right before he fell asleep. He looked up towards the Kage booth and saw no one there, but higher up, on another building, was a shining purple cube that stood tall. Forehead, get Naruto moving. We've got to go. Naruto heard Ino yell. He turned around and saw Ino pointing at a small pug with a Konoha headband. Pakken says we have to get out of here. He says Suki is getting way ahead. The dog ran up to Naruto and the boy leaned down to his level. I'm one Kakashi's summons. He gave you all a mission, Pakken said. What can it be now? I have to get up there. Naruto pointed to the purple cube. Hokage-san is up there. Listen, kid, there is no time. The Hokage is strong. He can take care of himself. Right now we have that Gaara kid we have to worry about, so let's go. Pakken turned and started off towards a hole in a wall made by a flying green blur that was shouting something about youth before it flew away. Oi Kiba, stay here and keep Hinata safe or I'll turn you into paste, got it? I didn't wake you up for nothing. Sakura yelled over her shoulder. She's still too injured from when she fought Niji, so waking her up would only be a burden for her. Kiba grunted back at the girl. Like you need to tell me. Akamaru, let's do this. The white puppy barked in response and jumped out of Kiba's jacket. Sakura, Shikamaru, and Ino started to follow Pakken while Naruto continued to stare at the purple barrier with a grimace. Naruto! I'll be right there. Naruto yelled back. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 3 puffs of smoke appeared in front of Naruto and he lowered his hands from his seal. Ichi! Naruto started looking at the first clone. I'm on it, Ichi cut off before his form disappeared in a plume of smoke. Naruto turned to the 2 remaining clones. You know what to do. Get to it. Right, boss. Naruto dismissed them with a quick wave of his arm and the 2 blonde clones blurred away. Naruto turned around towards the hole where his teammates for this impromptu mission were waiting. Ready. Naruto and his team jumped from tree to tree as they were led by Pakken. All around the group, even that far into the surrounding forests, battles were raging everywhere. Naruto looked around warily as he pushed off a branch. How could this happen? I thought Suna was our ally, Ino said. They are, or were supposed to be, Sakura muttered. But lately I've heard that their village hasn't been doing too well. Their daimyo has been looking to other villages for missions and Suna has been losing money. So they betrayed us for money. Naruto roared. Cool it, Naruto. Naruto turned to glare at Shikamaru. That money that they needed was to help pay for food and water. Water, especially seeing as how they are in a desert. Naruto huffed but agreed begrudgingly. But why did they have to betray Konoha? Pakken stopped suddenly on a branch and raised his nose. The dog turned his head from side to side then looked back. We're being followed. A platoon of ninja from the smell and chakra levels. Damn, Shikamaru cursed. Can we get away? I've been trying to lead us through a route so we can shake them off, but they are persistent, Pakken growled out. We need to split up then. If they follow a decoy then dash. That actually might work. Yelled Naruto. I'll stay here and confuse them with my clones and then catch up as fast as I can. You guys go on ahead but don't go too far so I can catch up. No way Naruto, you need to keep going and I'll stall them. My techniques are made for that. Shikamaru stepped forward and waved the others away. If I can catch them all then that will give you guys enough time to reach Suki. But Shikamaru, what if you can't hold them off? Ino asked worriedly. Shikamaru didn't answer for a moment and when he finally did it wasn't what Ino wanted. Just hurry it up. The more time you waste the more time you are losing. He's right. We have to go now. Naruto frowned at the dog's answer and looked back at Shikamaru. He didn't like the idea of leaving Shikamaru by himself against a platoon of Oto ninja. At least if he stayed he could spam shadow clones and sneak off. With Hirenkyaku he would easily catch up. But it looked like Shikamaru wasn't going to budge on his decision. Be careful Shika. Naruto said and the group started off again. Shikamaru looked behind his back for a second before looking forward once more. He pulled a kunai with a tag tied to it from his pouch and sighed. Troublesome. Orochimaru backpedaled away from a salvo of roof tiles that flew at him akin to shuriken. He smiled eerily and licked his lips as he used his snake-like body to move around the projectiles. Hiruzen frowned at his former student and the way the pale man's body moved. Flying through seals once more, a river of mud shot out from the roof and flowed down, catching a surprised Orochimaru in its stream. A second and 20 hand seals later, a dragon head made of mud rose from the mud river and opened its mouth at the struggling Sannin. Dutan, Duryodhan no Jutsu, Earth Style, Earth Dragon Bullet Jutsu. Sarutobi yelled and a dragon's head made of mud rose from the river. Opening its maw, it shot out a round of mud bullets towards Orochimaru. 1 second and a sequence of seals later and Sarutobi was shooting a stream of fire that lit the mud pellets aflame. There was a scream of pain as the shots impacted Orochimaru, but Sarutobi scowled at the lack of body and he turned around to see Orochimaru rise from the ground with a sickly smile on his face. The snake Sannin's face was ripped on the upper half, showing pale and unmarked skin. The immortality technique of Orochimaru was truly a disturbing technique. Look at what you have done to yourself. Is this the cost of the power you so desired? Sarutobi thought grimly. Orochimaru chuckled as he pulled his upper skin off and threw it away, getting rid of any past injuries that marked him. Dear sensei, is that really all you have? Old age must be getting to you. Orochimaru said. Hiruzen grabbed at his robes and threw them off to show the battle armor that was under his formal wear. I may have aged more, but my skills have always been eons above yours, my wayward student. And with that said, the third Hokage rushed forward faster than the Anbu outside could follow. Orochimaru leaned to the side to dodge a viscous snap kick that made the air whistle. Sarutobi followed the kick with a downward thrust that Orochimaru was too slow to dodge, making him block. Orochimaru grunted in pain as he felt his arm almost snap from the force of his former sensei's blow. He may be old, but he was not the Hokage for nothing. Sarutobi grabbed a hold of the arm that blocked his attack and twisted it, eliciting a grunt from Orochimaru. Spinning on his heels, Sarutobi pulled Orochimaru into him and threw the man over his shoulder. As Orochimaru sailed towards the ground, Sarutobi blurred through a string of seals before spitting out a stream of mud. The mud instantly formed into a large wall that sprang up under the snake Sannin. Before the mud wall could strike, though, Orochimaru twisted his body so that the wall missed by inches. Sarutobi flew through another set of seals that caused the wall to burst apart into an avalanche of spiked boulders. Placing his hands into the snake seal, the old Hokage stomped his foot onto the ground and the pile of rubble sank in almost as if a great force slammed down on it. Hiruzen straightened up and admired his handiwork. He didn't have long to admire as a sword glowing pale blue pierced him in the stomach. "What an amazing jutsu combination, sensei," Orochimaru whispered from behind the stabbed Hokage. "No wonder they call you the professor. Too bad it didn't work." The man that was pierced through Orochimaru's Kusanagi shimmered out of existence only to be replaced by one of the boulders, making Orochimaru frown. "You always did think the Academy 3 were a waste of time. Once you could use them, you never stopped to actually learn them." Sarutobi stood atop the rubble he caused with his arms folded. "Everything to you was all about how many techniques you could learn." "Knowledge is everything, sensei," Orochimaru hissed smoothly. "I had such high hopes for you. And your sympathy will be your downfall." Orochimaru flung the rock off his legendary sword and rushed at Sarutobi. Sarutobi quickly went through 5 well-known hand seals. Kuchiyos no Jutsu. Naruto jumped off a branch and soared through the air with his face forward. Behind him, jumping at the same pace, were Ino and Sakura, while Pakken led the trio towards where he smelled Suki. Naruto was starting to panic as they got closer. Just moments ago they had to deviate from their path and go around a battle that was taking place. Pakken had stated that one of the scents belonged to one of the Suna ninja. The other scent made the small pug wary as he stated that it wasn't entirely human. The girls immediately said to go around, and that's exactly what they did. They had resumed their normal path after going around and were now on track once more. "We're close," Pakken said as he stopped on a branch and lifted his nose up. The group stopped behind the dog and raised their heads up. Unlike the dog that had an amazing sense of smell, they could not sense anything yet. As if on cue, a piercing roar echoed into the forest, causing Naruto to sweat. What the hell was that? Naruto thought with a gulp. "We need to hurry. Pick up the pace," the dog ordered, and then hurried off. Naruto gulped audibly before following. He had a gut feeling that something was going to happen. Something horrible. The group stopped their tree hopping and came across a truly horrific sight. The boy they thought was Gaara now resembled a monster made of sand. His whole top half was covered in sand and was outlined with blue veins. He resembled a viscous tanuki with glowing gold eyes, and behind him waved a single long tail made of sand. The only part of Gaara not covered in sand were his legs. Suki stood off to the side, panting and holding her left arm. The curse mark was activated as seen from the flame-like tattoos that spread across part of her face. Naruto and the girls immediately jumped in front of Suki and pulled out their weapons. "What happened?" Naruto yelled behind his back. "I was fighting him to the point of where I needed to pull out this damn thing." Suki gestured to her shoulder where the curse mark was located, "and when I thought I finally took him down, he turned into that." Gaara growled and narrowed his eyes at the ninja. "More puny insects for me to satisfy, mother?" "Fine then." Gaara lifted one of his claws. "Feed mother your blood." Suna Shuriken. With a mighty swing, a round of shuriken made of sand flew at the ninja. Naruto cursed and the genin jumped out of the way as the projectiles tore through the branch they were just on. "What the hell is he?" Ino whispered in fright. "He's a monster right now," a shaky voice answered. The Konoha ninja turned to the side to see a clearly shaken up Temari come out from behind a tree. Due to the influence from the demon inside of him, Gaara is becoming more and more wild. Soon no one will be able to beat him. Gaara roared and turns his head towards where the ninja were standing. "No one. We won't know until we try," Naruto said, standing from his crouched position. And if we don't try, well, we're all screwed. So I'm not giving up without a fight. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Goma Goma no Raifuru. An Oto ninja screamed in pain as he was sent spinning away into a wall where he impacted it with a loud thud. He didn't get up afterwards. Naruto's hand sprang back and he turned to the side where another group of enemy ninja were heading for him. Shot again. The ninja were shot down mid-flight by a barrage of blue pellets and tumbled down to the arena. The Naruto who had just subdued his opponent with a rifle attack looked to the side where another Naruto stood with his fist out. The two clones that Naruto had made prior to his leaving glanced at one another and frowned. These guys are coming too fast. I almost got dispelled once when I had to protect her, a clone stated pointing at Emi. Emi lay slumped on her seat with her head leaning on Takuma's shoulder who was sleeping with a bit of drool going down his mouth. Bastard. When he wakes up I hope he learns how to dispel genjutsu, the second clone stated with a sweat drop. I mean if the two of them can use chakra to make weapons then why can't they use jutsu? Like we can talk, the first replied with an equal sweat drop. Naruto had to be woken up by Sakura-chan. There was a collective silence between the two clones before they sighed aloud. We suck at genjutsu. As the two clones lamented their incapability regarding illusions, a certain green jounin had appeared in front of a stray Suna that had decided to try and use a civilian as a meat shield. As the beautiful green beast and protector of all things youthful, Mato Gai could not let this crime go unpunished. So with a mighty scream of youth the offender was sent flying backwards. Unfortunately for the man he was sent careening towards two very upset Narutos. Yuwa! The scream of pain from the shinobi brought the clones out of their trance as he shot towards the two. Oi, gimme a hand. One clone said to the other who responded with a nod. It jumped into the air and transformed as a cloud of smoke blocked it from view. The enemy flew closer and just as he was within range the clone quickly reached into the smoke and swung out. Run! The boy shouted as a loud metallic ping was heard. The sand shinobi who was shouting in pain before now gasped out before he was sent flying out of the stadium via the golden bat in the Naruto clone's hands. He watched as the ninja flew through the air then threw the bat behind his back where it turned back into a Kage Bunshin in a poof of smoke. Well, that was interesting. We need to protect as many people as we can while also protecting Takuma and Emi. Yeah, back into the fray of things. This was war after all. Naruto twisted out of the way as a stream of sand shot towards him. He landed on a branch but stuck for only a moment before he jumped once more. The branch imploded a second later as a wave of sand turned it into sawdust. Damn! This guy doesn't give up. Naruto yelled in frustration. Naruto turned his head to the cause of this and felt fear ebb its way into his heart not for the first time this day. The mini Shukaku that was Gaara was cackling madly as numerous tendrils of sand waved about him like tentacles. A few of the sand tentacles had chased Naruto but the others were now in the process of chasing his companions, minus Pakken who had jumped onto a higher branch due to him being more of a tracker. Suki growled angrily and activated the Karyu Engo allowing the slim dragon of fire to orbit around her. The flames burned at most of the sand that attacked her but there were still too many. The curse mark was still active and was debilitating her. Suki grunted in pain as a line of sand impacted her shoulder and sent her spinning to the side. Before she hit the tree she was flying towards a blur of pink latched onto Suki's hand. Sakura landed and quickly let go of Suki lest the fire around the girl burn her. Suki took a few deep breaths before standing and gripping her shoulder. Suki-chan, are you okay? Sakura asked. I'll be fine. My main concern are those things. You don't have any long-range or wide-range moves, do you? Suki asked Sakura. Sakura shook her head in a negative with an embarrassed frown. Suki turned to Ino who was standing to the side with a kunai in her hand. And you? I have a few long-range attacks, but I don't think they will be effective. My Shintenshin no Jutsu is my only sure-fire jutsu that I can say would harm him. Suki was about to open her mouth to tell Ino to use it when she was cut off. You cannot use that jutsu, Ino, Naruto said as he hopped onto the branch the three girls were standing on. Gaara has a demon sealed inside of him and it's jacking up his mind. If you even try and go into his mind then I'm scared to think about what would happen to you. Naruto explained as he saw the confused looks on his companions. Why you're scared for me? Ino said surprised. Naruto grinned back and nodded. Of course I am. I don't want my friends hurt and no matter what I will protect my friends. I will protect everyone here no matter what. Ino couldn't help the small blush that appeared before she huffed. Sakura smiled at her teammate's bravado. Naruto always did have that personality. It was sad that she wasn't able to see it till recently. Chivalrous idiot. Suki muttered with a grin. A number of sand tendrils suddenly appeared around them and waved back and forth, breaking up their small conversation and ending their sense of relief. Naruto cursed loudly before cocking his fist back and letting loose a shotgun blast of chakra. Unfortunately for the boy, he didn't hit all of them, as a few lines of sand dodged to the side and were now shooting at the genin. Shit! A wave of wind shot out and the sand was blown away. Naruto looked up quickly and saw Temari with her fan unfolded and her stare hard. Can you protect everyone here with that sort of power? Temari jumped down from her perch and looked at her brother as he pulled back the sand that was attacking them. What can you do against a monster like that? He isn't a monster. Naruto said flatly now that he was realizing what was happening. His usual exuberance was missing while saying that. Shukaku is the monster trying to take control. Gaara is your brother, isn't he? Temari was silent. Isn't he? Yes. Temari yelled at Naruto. Do you see him as a monster? Do you want me to kill him? No. Temari cried out. Please, please save my little brother. Temari screamed out as she brought her head down. The girl clenched her fist so tightly that it started to bleed. She could feel her eyes well up. It wasn't fair. All her life she tried to get to know Gaara, but because of her father and the damn Shukaku, she was denied the right to get to know her youngest brother. The baby brother she was denied to take care of was taken from her and made into the Jinchuriki he is now. Consider it done. Temari shot her head up and looked into the shining blue eyes that bore into her teal ones. I am angry at you. Naruto started. I am extremely upset at you and your village for betraying us like this. Naruto turned away and stared at Gaara before crouching down and cracking his knuckles. However, like I said before, I will protect everyone, and if you are helping us out then I will protect you too. Will you help us? Temari recoiled slightly in shock before stuttering out a response. Why yes. Then I'll do my best to protect you too. Naruto roared as he let out a burst of chakra. Everyone stared in shock at his outburst, no more than the princess of Suna. Besides, who am I to kill someone who has suffered like me, no, perhaps suffered even more. Naruto finished quietly as he let his chakra shroud his body slightly. Wait, what do you mean? Temari asked. Naruto didn't answer and instead crouched slightly before blurring away. Hey. Answer me. Instead of talking so much, why don't you help him? Suki stated flatly as she stood up. Temari glared at the other girl and held up her fan. So do you know about Blondie's past then? Temari bit back. Suki flinched at that while Sakura and Ino looked down in shame. None of them really knew much about Naruto's childhood. Sasuke's, or more like Suki's, past was known due to the fact that it is hard to hide the destruction of a whole clan. She had a hard past, many in the village knew this. As far as Naruto went, they knew that the adult populace did not like Naruto. In fact, many of them tended to flat out ignore the boy as if he didn't exist. This fact was troubling. What did Naruto do to deserve the scorn of the village? Didn't think so. My question was valid. Temari said as she turned towards where Naruto was bouncing from tree trunk to trunk to get closer to Gaara. Can he really do it? Do what? Sakura asked. Can he beat Gaara? TCH, of course, Suki answered. But that idiot is going to need as much help as he can get. And I guess we're the ones who need to do it. The curse mark faded back as Suki gnashed her teeth together, her will pushing back the dark chakra. As brave as that dope is for thinking he can protect us. He seems to forget. Sakura and Ino walked to the side of Suki and tensed their muscles. Temari pulled her arms back and raised her fan. We're stronger than he thinks. With that declaration, the four girls jumped after the boy. The life of an ANBU captain was filled with sorrow. There was no escaping that in this line of profession. However, there are instances when something in life will stem the horror of being a shinobi. For ANBU Captain Yuzuki Yugao, this something was Gekko Heiate, the man who was able to make her smile every time they were together. The man who she had pledged to one day settle down with, and this moment, the man whose name she was staring at on the memorial stone. A woman of her stature had no tears to shed. No, right now her eyes were dry, but her heart was weeping. Captain, it is time, a bare-masked Anbu stated. Yugao stood up from her kneeling position in front of the stone. With a heavy stare towards the village she nodded and turned to her team of 4. Let's move out. Yugao clipped her cat mask onto her face. She was no longer the woman who mourned for her lost love. She was now Nico, captain of the 5th Division of the Konoha Anbu. She was now a cold hard killer and she was now ready to reap her revenge. I will avenge you, Hayate. The Anbu team blurred away and started their task. As they sped around the village they left a wake of dead Suna and Oto ninja behind them. Their goal was simple. Take out the masses of enemy nin that were invading their home. As the team came close to the arena, one of the Anbu tilted his head and grunted. Captain, isn't that the Uzumaki kid? An Anbu with a bird mask said as he tilted his head towards a building. Yugao turned her head and pierced her gaze on what her subordinate was looking at. And it was true. There, running up a building towards the large purple barrier, was a spot of yellow and orange. Should we get him away, Captain? Yugao was silent for a moment before speaking. We follow him. Take down any that try to get to him, Yugao said. I want to see what he is doing. As the Anbu team blurred off, Ichi was running as fast as he could towards the purple barrier where he knew the Hokage was at. As he rushed up the building he was surprised he wasn't met by any other ninja. It was an odd occurrence considering there must have been hundreds of enemy ninja around. Strange. Ichi landed with a thud on the roof and rushed up to the side. Aji-san, hold it. Ichi stopped suddenly and turned around. There to the side were 3 Anbu with the one in the middle bearing an all-white ensemble. The leader of that squad most likely. All of them were staring hard at the barrier that blocked them. If you even so much as touch that you will burn to a crisp. Ichi stared at the wall of purple that was blocking him and growled. What could he do to get past that damn wall? That's when he saw the Hokage appear in front of him. His battle armor was torn and frayed and he was injured all over. The black staff he was holding twirled in an attempt to block a dragon of water that appeared from nowhere. The Hokage then thrust out and to Ichi's amazement the staff elongated and smashed into the chest of a man the clone thought looked vaguely familiar. JG-san. The Sandaime looked over and was shocked to see the blonde boy. And Naruto. His moment of lapse allowed a branch to sneak up behind the old man and slam into his back. Aji-san. Ichi yelled. Damn it. How can I get through this? Ichi dropped to his knees. How do I help you, Ji-san? Naruto jumped above a claw of sand and snapped his leg out in response. His heel caught Gaara in the face and the half-transformed boy stumbled. Naruto didn't let up on his attack and brought his other foot out for an arcing roundhouse. He blew chakra that covered him made a trail as his foot connected with the stomach of his opponent. Once the blonde landed he had to duck hastily to avoid being decapitated by the tail made from sand. Naruto hopped backwards as Gaara regained his footing and smashed his fist into where Naruto was just standing. As Naruto dodged back, Suki came down to take his place and engaged the mini Shikaku. Gaara growled in frustration. The Uchiha would throw out punches and let the fire from her dragon impact the sand instead of actually punching him. To make matters more annoying, that blonde and pink-haired girl would rain down kunai and shuriken whenever they had a chance. And it seemed like the two annoyances had many chances. Naruto landed next to Temari and breathed heavily. Your brother is freaking strong. Why do you think I said it was no use fighting him? Temari spat out as she swung her fan and shot a swirling blast of air at Gaara. Yeah, well, all I need is one good hit and I can beat him. Naruto surveyed the area and then looked at the girls that were currently fighting with Gaara. Their chances in winning were extremely low. But odds never stopped Naruto and it wasn't going to start now. Looking at Temari's fan, Naruto started to form a plan. Oi Temari, do me a favor. Temari arched her eyebrow but shrugged and nodded. When I jump forward I want you to direct a stream of wind to me. I'm going in for an all-or-nothing attack. You think that will work? At the moment it's gonna to have to. Naruto crouched down and flared the chakra around him briefly before he jumped forward. As Naruto flew forward, Temari shot out a gust of wind that overtook the blonde boy and increased his speed potentially. Naruto felt like he was flying. There was no other way to describe the feeling he had. It was pure euphoria. As he passed the surprised faces of his friends he couldn't help but grin. He was a blonde and orange arrow streaking at the boy covered in sand, leaving a trail of blue in his wake. Naruto spun around so that his feet were facing first towards the ground he would land. Not even a second passed when he touched the ground did he disappear from view and reappear behind the monstrous form of Gaara. Fast. Suki thought, amazed. No way. Temari gaped. He used that Hirenkyaku move from the exams immediately when his foot hit something solid. With the extra boost from my wind, his speed from one point to another was instant. That was almost just as fast as when he was using that strange orange chakra. Naruto clenched his jaw and suppressed a groan of pain as he straightened his body and cocked his fist. Using Hirenkyaku like that almost broke his legs. Naruto's chakra that was covering him like a second skin centered around his fist. What? Gaara roared as he spun around to try and counter. He was too late, however, as Naruto rushed into his guard and pulled his fist back. You're done now, Gaara. Ryukuden, Spirit Light Bullet. Naruto smashed his fist into the equivalent of Gaara's stomach while he was in that transformation, and the half-sand beast half-boy hunched over. Gaara let out a choked gasp as Naruto roared and pushed with all his might. Finally, Gaara was thrown back as a thin beam of energy shot out and sent him tumbling backwards. He reached the apex of his arc and then shot down towards the ground, where Gaara slammed into it with a loud crash. Naruto jumped up and somersaulted till he was above Gaara's form. I was hoping that Ryukuden would have knocked out Gaara, but looks like one more hit should do it. I can still only transform one limb, but at least I am more expansive. Naruto quickly placed his hand into a seal as he finished his thoughts. Too bad that last move didn't get ya, but another push and this one should definitely knock you out. Oi, wait, you idiot! Temari yelled as Naruto raised his leg. There was a puff of smoke that surrounded that appendage, and from that smoke Naruto's leg stretched higher and higher, his orange pant leg replaced with the blue of a frayed shorts and his blue sandals now brown. Goma Goma no. Who are you, Uzumaki Naruto? What makes you so strong? How is it you can do this? My hate is greater than yours, Gaara thought. His rage grew with every second as he gazed upon the blonde above him. You who protect when I live to destroy. You should not be able to defeat me. You cannot win. Naruto, don't knock him out. Temari screamed out as Naruto's leg started to descend. Don't do it. Naruto's foot shot down at a frightening pace as he grit his teeth in concentration. Naruto! On dash! Uzumaki-I! Gaara's scream of pure malice was accompanied with an explosion of sand that shot upwards. It impacted Naruto's foot and the boy was sent spiraling out of control. Naruto slammed into a tree and coughed loudly as he spit out some blood. His leg immediately retracted and turned back to normal in a puff of smoke. The girls quickly landed beside him and helped the blonde up. Naruto wearily looked up and his eyes widened in amazement and fear. The half-transformed Gaara was no longer present. In his place stood a great behemoth made of sand. It towered over the trees and was easily at least 100 feet tall. And no. It's all over for us. It's come out. Temari sobbed out. Sweet Kami. Ino whispered as she dropped the kunai she was holding. It landed point first into the ground with a dull thud. It was the same sound that Sakura made as she dropped to her knees and gasped in horror. What are we supposed to do now? Breathed Suki as her dragon of fire faded away due to her depleting energy. Naruto sighed heavily and held his side in pain. Even if the odds looked grim, he would still fight. Even if it killed him, he would still fight. There was too much on the line, and the lives of the 4 people around him, and the dog that was somewhere, were counting on him. Even if he had to use his final trump card, he would fight on. Still, he was allowed to be just as shocked as everyone else though. So with a haggard breath he put in his 2 cents. Oh, what fresh new hell is this? Ichi moved around the sides of the large barrier, keeping the elderly Hokage in his sights at all times. At the moment the old man was fighting the Shodame and the Nidame simultaneously. Ichi had finally realized who the old Hokage was fighting and was redoubling his efforts to get into the purple cube. Fighting one Kage was difficult enough, but fighting 2 was insane. Plus the Sandame had Orochimaru slithering around him, which did not make things any easier. Sarutobi flipped away from a tree root that would have no doubt stabbed right through him. Spinning around he threw his staff at Orochimaru as the pale man tried to come up from behind and stab Hiruzen with Kusanagi. The staff flew above the Sannin before exploding in smoke and multiplying into a cage made of the black staves. The staves dropped down and enclosed Orochimaru in a cage, who growled lowly. Sarutobi turned back to the other problem, the two Hokages that were healing from the wounds he once inflicted. Why aren't those other guys dying? Ichi asked. They aren't truly alive, the ANBU commander answered. The previous Hokages have been summoned via a vile technique called the Edo Tensei. It is used to summon the dead to do the bidding of the summoner, pulling them from the afterlife, and they cannot return to death. Ichi recoiled in disgust. What sort of disturbed technique is that? It was developed by our Nidain. Ichi was shocked even more. How could one of the Hokages develop such a horrendous technique? It was darker times back then, Uzumaki-kun, the ANBU started. War was raging and our village was constantly in battle. The technique was originally made to use the dead soldiers as cannon fodder. Not everything is as black and white as you think, he said at Ichi's disturbed look. But to make such a jutsu, I don't know everything about it, so I can't tell you all the facts. However, there is a great cost to this technique. There was a cataclysmic explosion from beyond the barrier and the two stopped their talking to look. Orochimaru had slithered his way between the bars and sent a serpent of fire straight at the Hokage. Being the professor he was, Sarutobi created a wind tunnel that enhanced and directed the now flaming inferno towards the great tree that was protecting the two deceased Kages. Aji-san is so strong. Ichi whispered. But he is running out of time. What do you mean? Our Hokage is old. Even if he is a legend, time waits for no man. We all grow old, boy. The man draped in white turned his head towards the two clones that descended on the zombies. And as time passed, Sandaime-sama has grown weaker. He was only able to create 2 shadow clones after all those jutsus. But I am still impressed with those clones' endurance. What endurance? We clones pop after 1 hit. Right? You are a clone. Aha! Amazing! It is quite impressive that you have lasted so long. Normally clones would disperse after a single strong hit. However, as you progress with the Kage Bunshin skill, you learn to reinforce your clones so that they last longer. How do you do that? The ANBU shrugged. I do not utilize that technique. The man grunted in confusion suddenly as he peered into the barrier. What is this technique the Sandaime-sama is using? Ichi looked over and shrugged. It looked strange that the 2 clones of the Hokage were holding the zombies and doing nothing. But a second later Ichi gasped in horror and fell on his backside. There was no way that what he was seeing was real. It couldn't be possible. The original had only seen its picture in books. Shinigami. Naruto stared up at the giant form of Shukaku. This didn't look good. Naruto felt the telltale burning sensation around his ribs, signifying that Kyuubi's chakra had started its process of healing him. As far as chakra levels went, he was fine. Rikuden wasn't as costly as it would seem, and it wasn't like his henge took all that much energy. He had mostly recovered from his fight during the exams, and that was good because what he needed to do to fight what was in front of him was going to take a lot of chakra. Now what are we supposed to do? Sakura said in a defeated tone on the ground. The sheer size of Shukaku alone was amazing. Naruto hummed in thought as he was helped up by Suki. He pushed her away with a thank you before groaning as he stretched. Well, Temari, what's the verdict? How do we stop that thing? You can't. It's impossible now that he has brought out Shukaku and fallen into his fake sleep. Right now Gaara is invincible. Bah, no one is, unbeatable. Naruto looked to Ino, who nodded in confirmation before he continued, yeah, no one can be unbeatable. You just gotta keep on fighting with all you got. As Naruto said that, he reached to his side and unclipped his gloves. And right now I'm going to give whatever I have. If Gaara is asleep, then I'm just gonna have to wake him up. Sakura looked from the giant behemoth to Naruto as he slipped on his gloves and let the metal cover his fingers. Wait, you're going to fight that thing? With that weird thing you used against Niji? That's crazy. Are you stupid? You're insane. Crazy? Yes. Insane? Yes. But I don't think I'm stupid, Naruto said with a grin. That's to be proven, Suki whispered. Naruto glared at her before huffing and placing his hands in the ram's seal. Even though Suki said that she was still curious on what her teammate was going to do. She had missed the first round, so she didn't get the chance to see what Naruto had done. Maybe this was her chance. You guys find somewhere to stay safe. In fact, find Pakken. Alright, here goes nothing. Naruto closed his eyes and started to flare his chakra. Ha! A fiery veil of blue chakra started to coalesce over the boy's body, but he narrowed his eyes in frustration. This wouldn't be enough. Naruto pushed more chakra out with a loud shout and flared as much as he could. Ha! The blue cloak of energy shrank a bit before exploding outward to the shock of the people around him. What chakra? How much can one person have? Temari though amazed as she held her hand in front of her face to block from the wind picking up. Henge! A cloud of smoke erupted around Naruto before being blown away in an instant. Once again the form of Hyper Naruto had appeared. Only this time the flame-like chakra above his head and encasing his gloves was a shining blue that matched his calm eyes. Naruto looked down at his hands and clenched and unclenched them. This was what it was supposed to be during the Chunin exams. However, since his orange form was already deemed Hyper Naruto, this one needed to be different. It was the basis of hyper form, so it should be Hyper X. What? Asked Sakura. This form, it will be Hyper X Naruto. It will make things easier to differentiate between the two like forms. But yes, Naruto looked up, this will do just fine. And with that and a burst of blue, Naruto flew up towards Shikaku. Hyper X Naruto stopped flying and floated in front the face of the dreaded one-tailed demon Tanuki. The Ichibi was big, massive even, but Naruto easily spotted the sleeping form of Gaara nestled on the forehead in the sand. It would be difficult, but he may be able to get to the red-haired boy. Look, it's the little blonde insect that thought he was strong. The Shikaku squealed in delight. He even learned to fly. Now I can squash you like the gnat you are. Naruto frowned at that comment. He wasn't a bug, damn it, but if this thing wanted to be stung it would get its wish. Shikaku swung one of its massive arms at Naruto, who merely dodged and flew up the arm. As he flew up the arm, spikes of sand started to shoot up at the boy to try and impale him. Unluckily for the Shikaku, Hyper X Naruto had the hyper intuition, and that was all he needed to completely predict where to go. Naruto stopped near Shikaku's head where its neck would most likely be. There's my target, Naruto thought. If I can hit that place just right, I may be able to make the Ichibi stumble enough for me to get a chance to wake Gaara up. I only got one shot at this. If I mess up, then it will know what I'm planning and will never give me a chance again. Naruto flew out of the way of a few tendrils of sand and readied himself when he froze. No, it can't be. Ichi had backed away in horror as he saw the silhouette of the Shinigami pull out the souls of both the dead Hokages. After his initial shock of seeing the Death Reaper, he was able to see what had become of the bodies. The clone gagged. Behind the haze of the purple wall were the halfway rotted corpses of the two Sound Genin that were in the exams but had lost during the prelims. They were sacrifices. That's the cost of bringing someone back from the dead, the life of another. Ichi turned his head to see the Hokage engage Orochimaru in a fierce weapon-to-weapon battle. It was an amazing display, and when the Hokage knocked the shining blue sword from Orochimaru's hand, Ichi practically cheered. However, that's when things fell apart. Sarutobi believed himself to be a strong man. He had lived a full life, and an exceptionally long one considering his career. He had had his good times and his bad times. But to the Sandaime, that was life. On this day he was fighting the battle that he truly wished he did not have to do. However, for his village this needed to be done. Orochimaru, this is the end for you. Sarutobi yelled as he threw his staff at the unarmed Sannin. As the diamond-hard staff spun at the pale man, the king of monkeys Enma stuck his arm out from his staff to try and catch the man off guard. Unfortunately for him, Orochimaru let a number of snakes fly from his sleeve and catch the arm. Enma was thrown to the ground where he transformed back to his monkey form, but not without receiving a few bites that weakened him greatly. However, his job was done. Hiruzen sped into Orochimaru's guard, grabbed the man's shoulders while also pushing on some pressure points that would make Orochimaru's arms too numb for a counter. What are you playing at, old man? The Sannin hissed. Hiruzen merely chuckled. You should be seeing it by now. Soon it will all be over for both of us. Orochimaru stared in confusion at his former master before he gasped in shock as the form of the Shinigami appeared behind the Sandaime. You stupid old fool. Let me go or you'll kill is both. That is the idea, Orochimaru. Now farewell. Orochimaru screamed in frustration and used all his strength to move his hand. Enma saw what was happening and yelled a warning. Look, Anbu Gai Aji-san is going to dash. Sarutobi, look out. Ichi's sentence was cut off as he witnessed the Hokage get stabbed through his back by the Kusanagi. Oh, gee, San. Ichi whispered. Sarutobi grit his teeth as he felt his life force fading. He wouldn't be able to seal all of Orochimaru, but he would take his arms. Sadly, you will not join me in Shinigami-sama's stomach. However, your arms will. Shiki Fujin. The Shinigami sliced his knife and thus the technique ended. As Sarutobi fell, he turned his head to the petrified face of the blonde. He smiled. Live well, Naruto. May your will of fire burn as the leaves of Konoha fly through the wind. The Sandaime Hokage landed with a thud, a peaceful smile on his old weathered face. Enma disappeared with a shout of rage and surprise, his connection to the world disconnected. Orochimaru cursed and yelled for his guards. He needed to leave now. As the barrier fell and the Sound Four went to retrieve their master, Ichi continued to stare. The body of the third Hokage looked so peaceful, and yet Ichi knew the truth. He was dead. Anger bubbled within the clone. Righteous fury that had never been felt in a shadow clone before flowed. He had killed him. He had killed him. He had killed him. Orochimaru. Ichi didn't know when it happened or how. All he knew was that he passed the ANBU that were stuck in a golden web, and then he jumped after the group for Oto. From there is where his time ended, for as he jumped, a blast of crimson energy took his place and rocketed at the group. It smashed into Orochimaru's face and he screamed in agony. Ichi did not know what he had did before he poofed away, but the searing burn upon Orochimaru's left eye was proof enough. Far off the distance, HyperX Naruto stood still in the air. An image of a dead Sandaime in his mind. The sickening feeling that he didn't know if this was fake, or if it was a premonition, made the boy stop his attack. It cost him. A giant arm of sand swung at the boy and sent flying high into the sky. He coughed up some blood and spit out a glob as some trailed down his cheek. That was the wake-up call he needed. It was just my imagination, Naruto told himself. But if I don't hurry this up, will it happen? No time for questions now. Need to finish this up now. Naruto flew back into position and dodged all the hits that came for him like he was on autopilot, which technically he was. Naruto walked through the sloshing water and looked into the giant cage. A ruby red eye stared down at him in disgust. Naruto said nothing and only reached down into the water and held his hand under for a few seconds. I only need a small amount. You won't even notice it's gone, Naruto said before his form disappeared. The Kyuubi blinked in surprise. There was no banter between them. What could make the boy like that? The giant fox demon looked down into the waters to view what had happened recently. An image popped up and its red eyes narrowed. That could not be good. Naruto was back to reality and felt the chakra in his left hand pulse before changing from blue to orange. It was time. He flew quick and close and then held the hand that was still brimming with the fiery blue chakra out in front of him. The other was pointed behind him. What's this? Does the insect wish to die? Do you resign to your fate? Shukaku cackled gleefully. Don't stand too close, you crazy-ass demon, Naruto said calmly. Don't you know? The boy's hands started to pulse and the chakra started to flicker higher. Blue fire is hotter than red. Shukaku blinked in confusion before its focus shifted to the increasing brightness of the blonde's gloves, and that's when it felt it. The spike in chakra. X-burner. HyperX Naruto bellowed as dome-shaped blast of orange chakra erupted behind him. In front of him shot a great fiery blue beam of chakra that lit up the sky. GGH. The blast shot a hole straight through Shukaku's neck and the great sand demon stumbled backwards. Taking his chance, Naruto disappeared in a burst of speed and then appeared in front of the sleeping Gaara. Rearing his foot back, Naruto shot it forward and popped Gaara right out of the sand and up where he grabbed the boy by his shirt. No! 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 I don't want to go back, no! Shukaku screamed out as the sand beast fell to the ground. Gaara's eyes were wide with fear as the two boys floated in midair. No, please, stay away. No more. I don't want to die. I just want to exist. Gaara said hysterically. Naruto said nothing as they started to float lower, his head turned down. To be alone and have no one to care for you is the worst, isn't it? Gaara stopped screaming for Naruto not to hurt him and quieted down slowly. I know how you feel, Gaara. Naruto lifted his head up to show tears, making Gaara blink in shock. I know how you feel so much that it hurts. I could have been like you. But as time passed I worked my way into the lives of some very precious people. And I would do anything to protect them. Precious people? Gaara asked confused. They are where I get my strength and I swear that I will not let anyone hurt them. I will fight you again with all I have if you continue, Gaara. Naruto said fiercely. Gaara was silent. You are strong, Uzumaki. Because of them. But I do not have anyone precious who cares for me. You do, Gaara. Your siblings care for you deeply. Temari begged me not to kill you. She loves you dearly. You should learn to love them too. Gaara was silent to Naruto's proposal before he responded. I will try. That's all you need to do. Unfortunately, I wish you did it before all this happened. Why do you say that? I'm exhausted and we are going down, Naruto said flatly. Naruto was covered in ninja smoke and it cleared to reveal him back to normal once more, and unfortunately for the two boys they were still quite high up. Gaara looked down as gravity started to take them in her sweet embrace. Interesting. Will we die? Gaara said as they started to plummet to the ground. No idea, Gaara, but gravity sure is a bitch, Naruto answered as he felt exhaustion take him. He didn't notice as a blonde blur flew in front of him or the arms that grabbed onto him. All that was on his mind was that image of the Hokage lying down lifeless with a smile on his face. Naruto prayed to Kami that that was only just a bad feeling. He prayed that that wasn't true. Chapter 13, a Shinobi that I used to know. Ring, 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 hello? Hello? Haku-chan. Oh, Naruto-kun. I was wondering if you had accidentally dialed our phone. He's gone, Haku-chan. Naruto-kun. Who's gone? What happened, Naruto-kun? He killed him. Naruto-kun. Hokage GG. He's gone and it's all his fault. Oh no. Naruto, what happened? Who killed the Sandaime Hokage? Naruto-kun. Orochimaru. The rain was a cold blanket that froze Naruto to the bone. However, he did not care. His eyes were bleak as he stared at the coffin of the Sandaime Hokage, former leader of Konohagakure. The sound of Konohamaru crying to his side pierced through the sound of pouring water. How could this have happened? Naruto thought. He wished he could cry. Oh, how he did. If he could cry, then it would give warmth to his numb face. Naruto looked behind him and saw the mass of shinobi and civilian alike were there to mourn the loss of the Hokage. The Hokage was well loved in Konoha, amongst shinobi and civilian alike. Naruto looked forward once more to watch as the old man's old teammates stepped up to the wooden coffin and lay down their flowers next to the picture of Sarutobi Hiruzen. As the two set down the white roses and rose for a short prayer, Naruto gripped his own flower, letting the thorns rip into his skin. The blood that dripped down his hand was quickly washed away thanks to the pelting rain. Finally it was his turn. As Naruto followed Sakura and Suki, he looked behind him to see the line of his fellow genin. Kneeling in front of the coffin, Naruto set his rose down and bowed his head. Old man, I'm sorry. I wasn't able to save you. I could have saved you if I was stronger. If only I was stronger I would have been able to help you. Naruto clenched his fist again. Forgive me, old man. A pat on his shoulder made Naruto look up to see the solemn face of Kiba, his hand ready with his own rose. Naruto nodded and stood up once more. It was time to let the others grieve too. Naruto stepped back into his position and turned his head once more to the crying Konohamaru, who was being placated by Iruka. Iruka-sensei, why did he die? Naruto asked quietly. Iruka looked up and frowned. Well, Naruto, that is a tough question. Many people die for different reasons. Some people die for glory. Some people die for money. However, the death that Hokage-sama suffered was for neither of those. He died to protect his precious people. Naruto flinched a bit. His precious people, correct. This whole village is precious to him, Naruto. He sacrificed his life so that we all could live on. He died to protect the village's will of fire. Our will of fire. I think I understand, Naruto answered. He didn't understand really, but he didn't want to think any more than he had to. All he got from that was that the Sandaime died to protect his village, the people he loved. That was all he needed to understand at the moment. The rain continued to drape over the village. It was going to be a long walk home. Naruto walked down the path leading to his apartment. His black clothes clung to his body and he looked at them blankly. He never understood why people thought he would look good in darker colors. They really contrasted with his looks. Naruto pushed the door of his apartment open slowly and trudged to his bed. He plopped down on the mattress and closed his eyes, letting the day's events pass over him. Naruto already knew what was happening as he felt the pull on his mind. "So have you come to give yourself up, boy?" The Kyuubi growled from behind the cage. Across from the large gate, Naruto stood with the water moving around his feet. He walked slowly over to the gate and looked up with hazy eyes. Turning around, he sat down in the water and used the metal as a backrest. "What are you playing at, human?" Naruto said nothing as he hung his head low. The Kyuubi growled and raised its claw, ready to smash it into the gate that separated the two. It may not be able to grab the boy, but it sure can throw Naruto around. Drip. The Kyuubi halted its movements and perked its long ears up. Drip, drip. Tears of pain, of pent-up sorrow, had finally been let free over Naruto's loss. The grief that had been hidden all throughout the funeral and for the longest time came rushing out of Naruto as he threw his head back and let out a piercing wail. His sorrow was screamed upwards as he cried out, tears falling from his azure eyes and splashing to the floor. The Kyuubi lowered its paw and frowned as the human before it cried his heart out. It couldn't torment Naruto, not when he was like this, not right now. The pain of loss looms over the life of a shinobi. Naruto, the Kyuubi growled lowly as it lay down on its paws. But I understand that this loss is one of the greatest losses anyone could ever suffer. I should know. I've been inside you for your whole life. Naruto continued to cry even as the Kyuubi spoke. The loss of a person who means so much to you is always a cause of grief. But for Naruto, a boy who had nothing and no family, he had lost someone who had made him feel loved. Naruto had lost the only family he had ever come to know, the grandfather he never had. The Kyuubi knew this and lay quietly as Naruto sobbed, his cries of anguish echoing into the darkness. It had been 2 weeks since the funeral. 2 weeks since the cremation of one of the greatest Hokages Konoha had ever seen. And it had been 2 weeks since Naruto had been seen, and at the moment Suki was annoyed. There was a break on team meetings for a few days, but when they started again Naruto didn't show up. Kakashi had let it slide, but after he missed 3 days everyone started to worry. He wasn't found at his house. He wasn't found at the ramen stand, and he wasn't at any training ground that he had normally visited. Suki and Sakura were frustrated over Kakashi's lack of response. He only said to not worry too much about Naruto and that he would be back soon. That wasn't good enough for the two girls, so they both decided to go search for him. So it was now at that moment that Suki was huffing down the road with a scowl on her face. It was midday now, so the sun was at its zenith. Suki had already searched the local training ground and Ichiraku's. The blonde-haired dobe wasn't there. Growling in frustration, Suki decided it was time to play hardball. Trudging up the stairs, she stopped at the door of Naruto's apartment. Recently all she and Sakura had been doing is knocking. Everyone who has come to Naruto's house had knocked and gotten no response. No more knocking. Not this time. With a growl of aggravation, Suki lifted her foot and slammed it upon the door. "Dobe! You better be here!" Suki yelled out with her eyes full of rage. Her angry expression started to fade away as the sight in front of her registered in her mind. There Naruto stood naked with a towel around his waist held loosely. His other hand was holding another towel up to his head to dry his hair that was still wet from the shower he just got out of. Suki's dark eyes met Naruto's blue ones and both eyes started to widen considerably. Suki, Naruto." Naruto's hold on the towel around his waist slipped and it fell to the ground with a thud. There was a moment of silence between the two as they both slowly looked down, Suki with her foot still held up. "What the hell, you pervert!" Slap! It was 5 minutes later that Suki and a fully dressed Naruto were sitting at a table. Suki had her eyes closed and was sipping tea calmly, or looked calm, but the fierce blush and the twitching eyebrow betrayed any sense of calm she had. Naruto on the other hand was looking into his cup of tea with his own blush of shame and embarrassment. Suki took another sip of her tea before looking up at her teammate. "So where have you been for the longest time, Dobe?" Naruto chuckled and rubbed his neck. Training." "Oh really? I really haven't seen you at any of the training fields," Suki said quietly. She smiled, but Naruto felt a bead of sweat drop down his head. That wasn't a happy smile. "Naruto, have you been here this whole time? If not, then where have you been? It's been 2 weeks. You haven't come to training or seen anyone since the funeral." Naruto sighed. He really had no idea how much time had passed. He had been too wrapped up in what he was doing. Naruto, you need to let go. Sandan Sama died and there was nothing you can do. What could you have done? You weren't even their dash. I saw him die. Suki almost dropped her tea as Naruto cut her off. He was looking at her with such a serious expression. It didn't belong on his face in her opinion. What do you mean? I saw Hokage Jisan die. He died in front of my face. I saw his last smile. I heard his final words, and they were directed at me, Naruto said quietly. Naruto, how? Funny thing about the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, whenever the clone dispels its memories come back to the original. Ichi, my main clone, went to try and help the old man. However, there was nothing I could do, not with how I am now. After the Hokage died, Ichi dispelled, I guess, since after that I have no more recollection of what happened. Naruto was quiet once more and stood up. Suki was silent as she watched Naruto meander around his living room. Now that she had time, she was able to look around and notice the mess that was strewn about the apartment. Numerous books were littered around the area. Suki set her cup down and grabbed a random one. It was one of the orange books that the team had received back at Wave, Naruto's special copy. Naruto reached his kitchen and set down his cup. He was really tired at the moment. He watched as Suki picked up his book Kakashi-sensei gave him, then set it down. She then looked at all the other books that were lying around. The sound of footsteps made both look towards the hallway where a disheveled-looking Naruto holding a book to his face walked. Naruto sighed wearily as it seemed to walk around the stray books that were lying around. Watch where you're going or you're going to fall, Naruto said. The clone looked up and noticed where it was. Sorry boss, I was trying to figure out what a few of these things meant, the clone stated. Like, what does the word deconstruction mean? Naruto shrugged. If his clone didn't know it, why should he? The clone was essentially him. It means to break down. Like how something gets broken apart or disintegrated, Suki answered as she stared at the messy-looking clone. What is Naruto doing having his clone read? Naruto and his Bunshin looked at Suki in confusion and she sighed. Like when your noodles in your ramen break down into little pieces. Both blondes suddenly lit up in understanding. Now I understand. Okay, thanks Suki. As for you, Naruto said to the Bunshin. Hand it over. We should all be done for the day. I just learned that we've been out of commission for longer than I realized. The clone nodded and handed over the blue-covered book it was reading. Naruto set it on the desk and waved his arm. The clone disappeared in a plume of smoke and Naruto cringed in pain. Suki raised her eyebrow in confusion and then turned towards where she presumed Naruto's room was. Another round of poofing sounds came from the hall and Naruto rubbed his head in pain. What's wrong? Damn, that hurts. Those guys weren't slacking around. When all the clones dispel at once, it can be really bad cause they give me a whole rush of memories, and that can give me a headache. Naruto came back to his living room and slumped on his couch. You wanted to know what I've been doing for the longest time. I've been training my hardest. And not just my body. I can see that, Suki said as she picked up a book titled Basic Seals for Dummies. Dope, can you even understand what you are reading? Naruto shrugged. Sort of, kind of. But that doesn't really matter anymore. I should probably meet Kakashi-sensei. Suki joined Naruto on the couch and reached for her tea again. I hope he isn't that mad at Dash. A loud crash jolted the two teens and they turned to the side. Alright Naruto, time to get off your ass. Takuma yelled as he kicked Naruto's door open. Takuma's face melted from its look of anger to one of surprise as he took in the appalled face of Naruto and the frown of the girl next to him. Emi poked her head out from behind her brother and waved embarrassingly at Naruto, who waved back numbly. The cake for Naruto was when the top hinge that connected the door to the wall fell off and clattered to the floor. Takuma lowered his foot slowly and gulped as Naruto's eyes started to twitch. I can fix that. Well, it's good to see you too, Naruto muttered as he walked to the door and let them in. Takuma immediately went to work on the door hinge and grabbed the piece of metal on the floor. Setting it to the wall with one hand, he flicked his other hand and a multitude of tools spread out against his palm. Humming in thought, he grabbed one before flicking his wrist again and let the others fall back into his long-sleeved shirt. Emi walked out from behind her brother and walked up to Naruto. Naruto-kun. Naruto opened his mouth to respond but was brought into a bone-crushing hug from the girl that made him gasp for air. Suki, who was watching quietly, suddenly felt very annoyed for some reason. Emi let go and Naruto took a deep breath. "I'm fine, Emi-chan," Naruto said after a few deep breaths. "You and Takuma and I didn't need to worry about me, you know." Emi nodded and turned to where her brother was finishing fixing the door. Takuma wiped his forehead and walked over to where Naruto was. "So you okay, bud?" Takuma asked, patting the blonde's shoulder. "I'm fine. I just lost track of time with my training," Naruto sighed. "Look at all I was able to accomplish." Naruto waved at the mess of books around his living room and the scrolls that were draped over his TV. "Don't worry about anything, you guys. I'm going to be okay." "You sure, dope?" Suki asked, standing up. Naruto nodded and headed for the now closed and fixed door. "Yeah, no worries, Suki, let's just find Kakashi-sensei," Naruto said as he opened his door. As he opened it fully, his field of view was permeated by a large wooden clog. The words "oh damn" were the only things he could say before everything went black. Slam! Naruto walked through the streets with a large ice pack held to his forehead. A deep frown marred his features as he kept his eyes forward. Behind him walked the three people that decided to crash his house, and in front of him walked the man who gave him the bump on his head. Jiraiya looked behind him and grinned feebly at the glare the blonde genin gave him. "Aw, come on, kid. I didn't mean to kick you in the head," Jiraiya said, exasperated. "You were going to kick my door down," Naruto deadpanned. "Well, yeah, but there was good reason for that. Your kick would have broken down my door. Takuma and I just fixed it too." Jiraiya chuckled and waved off the boy as Naruto seethed. Suki looked in wonder at the strange relationship that Naruto had with apparently one of the legendary Sannin. It was quite odd seeing such a powerful ninja in person. Jiraiya looked at Suki and grinned suddenly. "Oh ho, I see my young student has gotten himself a girlfriend already." "Oh wait, is that two girlfriends?" Jiraiya leered as he looked at Emi and Suki. Suki's opinion of the Sannin suddenly dropped then and there. As far as she could tell, all Sannin were apparently perverts. Hell, one actually bit her neck. If that doesn't scream pedophile, then she didn't know what did. Naruto growled and threw the ice pack he had at Jiraiya, who nimbly dodged it and grabbed it from the air. "Don't be a perv, Senin. You know Suki is my teammate and Emi-chan is Takuma's sister," huffed Naruto. "Emi-chan eh? Why does she get to be Emi-chan and not dear Suki here, Jiraiya teased. "Shut up, why don't you call me Suki-chan?" Suki asked innocently. Naruto blushed and sputtered, causing the Uchiha to grin wryly. It was good to tease Naruto. Seems like he was back to normal. Naruto grumbled and followed Jiraiya as they reached the large building that was the Hokage's office. Naruto looked up at the large kanji for fire and resisted the urge to sigh. What was going to happen now? Takuma and Emi stopped at the doorway and Naruto turned to them. "Thanks you two, for worrying about me," Naruto said gratefully. Takuma and Emi smiled at the blonde. "It really means a lot to me." "No problem, Naruto," Takuma said, giving Naruto a quick thumbs up. "We are happy to help out any way we can, Naruto-kun." Emi smiled. Naruto grinned and nodded as the two waved and headed back to their shop. Jiraiya cleared his throat and Naruto nodded. He and Suki followed the man through the double doors into the Hokage's office. Inside stood Sakura and Kakashi, one who immediately ran towards Naruto, the other with his infamous orange book out. Naruto opened his arms as Sakura came towards the boy, fully expecting a hug. What he got was critical punch to his jaw that sent him into the wall, where he stuck there for a moment before sliding down. "KO," Kakashi said as he snapped his book shut and walked to the moaning Naruto. "Well then, it's good to see you, Naruto." "I'm sorry, Kakashi-sensei," Naruto moaned out. "Oh, don't worry about me. I knew where you were. I'm not a jounin for nothing." However, Kakashi pointed to the fuming Sakura, "is not a jounin. Although right now, even as a jounin, I don't want to get between her and you." Sakura stomped over to Naruto and grabbed him by the scruff of his orange jacket. "Do you have any idea how worried we've been?" Sakura screamed as she shook Naruto back and forth. "I'm so sorry, Naruto said between shakes. "I'll make it up to you," Sakura huffed and let the dizzy boy down. Naruto stumbled a bit before he straightened out and looked to the desk that was once full of papers. Standing on each side of the desk were Koharu and Hamura, Sarutobi's old teammates. Naruto stood next to his team while Jiraiya stood behind the blonde. Team 7 is now complete and reporting for duty, elders, Kakashi stated while he pulled open his book once more. Team 7 will join in the reconstruction of the village till further notice, Koharu stated sternly. The three genin bowed and started for the door. Jiraiya tapped Kakashi's back and gave him a subtle nod. Kakashi nodded back quickly before ushering out his students. Jiraiya turned back to the elders as the door closed and crossed his arms over his chest. Now before you both say something, I'm telling you right now that I'm not becoming Hokage. The two older ninja frowned at Jiraiya's abrasive attitude but ignored it in favor of letting the man finish. I do know, however, who I can get to become the new Hokage. All I ask is that you let me bring someone along. I have a little side project I want to work on, Jiraiya said with an eerie chuckle. Naruto hammered the final nail into the plank of wood that would become the roof for yet another destroyed house. Wiping the sweat from his brow, he got up from his crouched position with a grunt. As he surveyed his work, he felt another surge of memories flood into his mind. His clones were making great progress with the idea he had came up with. The only problem was how he could actually apply what he was working on outside of fantastic theory. Heaving a sigh, Naruto wiped his forehead and jumped down silently from the roof. After being stuck home moping for 2 weeks, he had forgotten how much less he worked out and went outside. He needed to get back into his old training habits. Not to say he was out of shape, far from it, he just felt rigid. Naruto stretched a bit and tightened his orange jacket that was tied around his waist. He had taken off his heavy jacket and the shirt and underarmor underneath because of how hot the day was. And for some reason Naruto would notice a bunch of girls hide behind nearby houses as he worked and giggle. How strange. Naruto shrugged and looked back at the house he was repairing. It seemed that the invasion did a lot of collateral damage. Thank Kami that there were barely any casualties. Naruto reached down to grab a handful of nails when he was roughly grabbed by his arm. The boy had barely a moment to yell in protest or see who grabbed him before he felt the lurch of high-speed movement and he was gone from his previous position in a plume of smoke. Naruto found himself inside his own apartment with Jiraiya gripping his arm with a wry grin. Naruto growled lowly and pulled his arm away. Alright Erosenin, what's the big deal? I was in the middle of fixing those houses, said Naruto as he went to his fridge to get a bottle of water. Pack your stuff, brat. We're heading out in 5 minutes. Naruto choked a bit on his drink and gave the man a disbelieving look. You're kidding, right? Nope. This was already discussed with your sensei. This is an impromptu mission of high-class importance that I was given and I decided to take you along, Jiraiya replied. Naruto stared at the man for a moment before walking to his door once more. Not interested. I've already missed enough time with my team so I can't miss any more, Naruto said over his shoulder. Don't worry about it, kid. They are already going to be training as well, so trust me, we'll just be gone for a month tops. Naruto continued to walk, so Jiraiya pulled out his trump card. I was also hoping to teach you a special technique while we were out there. That stopped the blonde in his tracks. Special technique? Yup. High A rank actually. Naruto turned and grinned. When do we leave? The Sannin and the blonde had left immediately once Naruto was ready. After a quick shower and sealing everything he needed into a few scrolls, they were off. The fact that the boy had some basic knowledge of seals greatly surprised Jiraiya, and when Naruto showed that he had the books to continue to learn, the man couldn't help but have a sense of pride. Maybe the boy would be able to learn the art of sealing from him also. The two of them were about 2 days into their journey and at the moment they had reached one of the towns that lay on the outskirts of Konoha. Naruto looked on in wonder at the streets that were bustling with an enormous amount of people. The only reaction the boy could give to such a sight was a low whistle of appreciation. They are having a festival at the moment, Jiraiya explained. So the streets are pretty crowded. Sweet, a festival. Naruto started to rush forward when he was pulled back. The boy stumbled but turned around with an angry huff. Oi, what's the big idea, Erosenin? If it is a festival then I'm heading down there. Jiraiya shook his head with a chuckle. Cool your head, brat. Remember why we even came on this journey. We need to look for leads for my old teammate and her whereabouts. Naruto sulked not so quietly before sighing. Fine, so where do we start? Well, you're too young to go to the local bars to try and get some information there, but maybe you can find out information on the street. Naruto nodded at the Sannin's proposal. Technically the boy was legally an adult due to his occupation, however he had no desire to go into a bar filled with drunkards. What about that jutsu you were going to teach me, Ero Senin? Jiraiya sighed and rubbed his chin in thought. Should he have the boy start already? After a minute of contemplation, the man shrugged and grabbed his bag from his back and started to rifle through it. After finding what he was looking for, he motioned Naruto to follow him, which the boy did. The duo walked through the streets as Jiraiya looked for something. Naruto said nothing and let his teacher do what he needed to do. After some searching, Jiraiya let out a small before walking to a metal spout that had a hose attached to it that was next to shop. Twisting the hose off, Jiraiya placed what he had in his hand over the spout and let the water fill the rubber balloon that Naruto could now see. Once it was filled, Jiraiya tied it up and handed it to Naruto before filling another one and holding it in front of him. The jutsu I'm going to teach you is very difficult, kid. It is broken down into 3 steps, gaining difficulty as you progress. For this first step you must pop this, Jiraiya motioned to the water balloon, with your chakra. Naruto tilted his head in confusion and looked at the sloshing orb of rubber and water in his right palm. How? Jiraiya grinned and held up his balloon to face level. Naruto watched fascinated as the balloon started to twitch and small bumps started to form on the outside. Before the blonde knew it, the balloon popped and water was splashed out at him. Hey, what the hell? Naruto yelled as some water splashed into his face. Jiraiya just chuckled before handing Naruto a handful of balloons. You need to pop the balloon using only your chakra. Here's a hint, this step is all about rotation, get it? So how would rotation pop that balloon? Think about it while I go do some searching. Naruto looked at the balloon blankly before looking back towards the man to ask another question. The white-haired Sannin was already gone. Naruto grumbled in frustration before walking up to the water spout. Rotation A. Naruto held the balloon out in front of him and started push his chakra into the sphere. He then started to spin his chakra while also spinning the water inside. The ball twitched a bit but nothing was happening. Humming in thought, Naruto started to put more chakra into the balloon and tried to spin his chakra faster. After about half an hour of him standing next to the wall of the shop, the boy had started to get the water balloon to shake in his hand. That wasn't enough though. Letting go of a breath, he didn't realize he was holding Naruto's side and decided to fill up a bunch of balloons so that if he did get this step down then he could practice. After placing a number of water balloons into his bag, Naruto carefully placed it back on his back and then headed off. As he walked around, he tried to recall the information Jiraiya had given him about his mysterious teammate. Apparently her name was Tsunade and she would most likely be at anywhere there was gambling. She was also known to have horrible luck and would skip out on any of her debts. Naruto scratched his head with his free hand and looked around. Amidst all the chaos from the festival, he couldn't really find anything that resembled a casino. Plus, the only casino that he could compare to was the one in Konoha, and that one had a huge sign with dice and playing cards on it. Naruto didn't think there was going to be something so conspicuous in this place. Not with all the other decorations. Suddenly Naruto spotted a crowd of people hanging around a large building. His curiosity piqued. Naruto walked over to the crowd while continuing to try and spin his chakra in the balloon. Through an amazing amount of luck, it turns out that Naruto had happened upon one of the casinos that were littered around this town. Naruto meandered through the throng of people and stopped next to one of the card tables that weren't being used. Looking around, the boy decided to sit down and ask the dealer if he saw Tsunade. Hey dealer-san, Naruto called out to the young woman with a beautiful figure and long brown hair who was shuffling her cards expertly. She looked up from her shuffling to stare at the young teen, confused. What are you doing here, kid? Only adults are allowed to play here. Naruto tapped his headband with his left hand while his other put the water balloon into his bag. I'm a ninja, ne-san. I've been an adult since I was 12. I still don't feel comfortable having you here with the others, the woman said, motioning to 3 other people there. It was an older man with round glasses and a young couple hanging off each other as if they were newlyweds. Hey, I'm just here to ask a few questions. The dealer still looked apprehensive. Naruto sighed and tried a different route. Maybe there is something I can do so you can help me. The woman looked at Naruto and was about to answer when something cut her off. Ow! God damn it! The dealer sighed as a small explosion came from the side and looked over to where the slot machines were. Not again. Fine, here's the deal. You figure out how to deal with that, she pointed to the side, and I'll help you. Naruto raised his eyebrow before shrugging. The boy walked over to the slot machines and followed the sound of mutterings and cursing. He found the source rolling on the ground holding his face next to a smoking pile of metal and an odd-looking helmet. Wait, that isn't a helmet. That's... Are you okay? The man uncovered his face and faced Naruto. The boy looked down into the face of a young man in his early to mid-20s. He was dressed in what would be sharp-looking black suit that was crumpled and covered in oil. A dirty white shirt lay underneath. He looked like a normal mechanic, however, everything that was normal about the man stopped there. His unruly hair was half black and half white. What was even more interesting was that his eyes were also black and white but just opposite of his odd bicolored hair. He was giving the young blonde a wary look before grinning heartily. Hey kid, how's it going? The strange-looking man stated. Naruto blinked a few times before squatting down to help the man up. Naruto pulled the guy up, gave the man a cloth that was lying on the floor. What are you doing, mister? Me? Why, I'm creating the next great thing in security. The man said with a glint in his eye. Naruto felt like gulping with that glint. Or well, I was going to, but the craftsmanship of these parts aren't meeting my specifications for my beautiful invention. Were you making a chibi Gundam? Naruto asked as he picked up the charred remains of what he now recognized as a Gundam head. The man looked surprised before smiling brightly. Why, I'm surprised that you would recognize this. Especially from what's left of it, the guy laughed. Naruto shrugged, then put the scrap metal down. I'd have to recognize a lot of manga and anime references for my skills. Though not a lot of people would know what this is. The man huffed in annoyance. The metalwork isn't high enough. I need real smiths for ideas. This is pretty advanced for our time. I'm surprised you have the knowledge to do all this. The man merely laughed. Boy, you have no idea. I am a genius. I am a technological wonder. Naruto gave the man a flat stare. Then what happened here? I didn't say I'm a metalworking wonder. Naruto shook his head and bent down to actually study the rubble that was the strange man's invention. It was quite amazing actually to see someone with an advanced knowledge of technology and who had taken something from some of the popular media sources. Too bad Takuma and Emi aren't here, Naruto muttered absently before standing up. Who's that? The man asked, hearing Naruto's muttering. Naruto tilted his head in wonder before shrugging. They are two of my close friends. And they are also the greatest smiths I know. Really now? The man had a sudden glint in his eye once more and Naruto had to repress another gulp. Look mister, I was wondering if you could maybe keep it down, Naruto said, trying to ignore the strange man's new mutterings about faulty metal and poor materials, so I can ask that lady over there a few questions. Naruto pointed to the brown-haired woman. Ah, Sherry? Yeah, she doesn't like it when I work when there are a lot of people here, the man chuckled. He wiped his hand with a cloth and grabbed a small toolbox behind him. So what are you doing, kid? I'm on a mission, Naruto said, grinning before he became slightly depressed. The man immediately picked up on this. You okay, kid? My mission isn't going too well. What kind of mission can a kid like you be on? The man asked. Naruto poked his headband like he did with Sherry and the man leaned in to get a good look at it. You're a ninja. Really? Naruto nodded. So yeah, I'm going to head back over there, Naruto stated slowly. The man nodded absently as he watched Naruto walk away. I sense possibilities, the man grinned. Naruto walked back to the card table every once in a while, looking over his shoulder. The bicolor-haired man was still staring at Naruto with a contemplative look on his face. Weird. Hey, so I got him to quit whatever he was doing. You think you can answer my questions now? Naruto asked Sherry. Sherry looked obviously relieved and nodded. Sure, sweetie. What do you need to ask? Sweet, so has a woman by the name Tsunade come by here recently? Sorry, but we don't really ask the name of our customers. Well, how about a lady with extremely bad luck? The woman's face actually lit up after a moment of thinking. Yes, actually someone like that did come by here not even 3 days ago. It was interesting since my manager is still furious that she skipped out on her tab here, the woman giggled. It was quite the sight to see. What did she look like? Naruto asked, thinking about the description Jiraiya gave him before he went off to search. Blonde with pigtails and wears a green coat. Come on, say she was blonde with pigtails. Naruto thought earnestly. Well, she was a blonde woman who had her hair tied on each end, in pigtails actually. She had another woman with her as a companion. That woman had short dark hair and was carrying a pig. She shouldn't be hard to miss, that one. Naruto whooped and shook the Sherry's hand. Thanks Ne-chan. That means we're on her trail. The boy turned around and headed towards the exit. As he reached for the door handle for the casino, Naruto felt a hand on his shoulder. Hey kid, hold on a minute, I want to talk to you for a minute. It was that strange man once again that Naruto had just talked to. Naruto blinked a few times before nodding slowly and walked outside. Once on the street, the blonde once more pulled the water balloon from his bag and had it resting in his right palm. So kid, you finished that mission? Aw, that's actually for my sensei, and no. We have this special mission, I guess. Though I'm not sure if it's classified, Naruto replied as he focused on what was currently becoming the greatest annoyance in the world to him. The man watched silently as he and Naruto walked through the streets. Naruto could feel the water in the balloon spinning very fast. In fact, the balloon was actually becoming flat. But the damn thing still wouldn't pop. Naruto looked at the balloon bitterly, almost willing it to explode before the man beside him started to chuckle. It seems you're having another problem, kid. Yeah, it's this stupid technique I'm learning. By the way, pretty amazing stuff you were trying to do back there. The man smiled. Trust me kid, when I can get some of my big ideas out you will be amazed. I just need, how you say, some help. Like they say, two heads are better than one, you know. The man replied. Naruto nodded before suddenly stopping. Two heads were better than one. That's it. Naruto grinned and quickly looked for another water spout near a less crowded area. After pulling another 4 water balloons from his bag, Naruto filled another 5 and set all he had on the ground. The man watched curiously as Naruto counted the orbs on the ground. Alright, and that makes 10. So if 2 heads are better than 1, then how about 10? Naruto grinned before placing his hands in a cross seal. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Behind Naruto, 9 clones popped out from clouds of smoke. Each blonde grabbed a water balloon and then grinned at one another. Alright, so we all know what to do. Pop the fucking balloon. The clones chorused. Naruto grinned as the other blonde set to work before turning to the man who had a surprised look on his face. Wow, the fabled Kage Bunshin. I never thought I'd get to witness it, and from a kid too. The man said, amazed. He chuckled lightly, and before long the light chuckling became loud guffaws. Naruto slowly backed away from the man that was becoming increasingly crazy. He looked weird enough, but with his mad cackling Naruto felt the need to run. Yeah, I'm going to head out of here. Nice meeting ya, Naruto said before he turned to walk away. He was stopped as he felt a pull on his collar and he looked back warily. Now what, kid? I knew I was right when I went to follow you. I had a gut feeling about you and I always follow my gut feeling, the man smirked. The name's Kira, Rokunai Kira, and today is your lucky day. Kira said loudly before placing a small card in Naruto's hand. The boy read it slowly. Rokunai Kira, mad genius. Naruto felt his eyebrow twitch before sighing. His life was never simple, was it? Naruto was currently on top of the roof of one of the more decorated buildings with a water balloon resting in his hand. Kira was laying on the edge as the sun was starting to set. There was a loud pop followed by a splash as the balloon in his hand popped suddenly. Naruto quietly pulled another from his bag and held the dark blue orb to the setting sun. The balloon started to bulge everywhere before popping again. He flicked his hand to let the water fly off before sitting next to Kira. Not that I'm not grateful for your advice in helping me and my clones figure out our training, but could you please explain why you want me to help you out? Naruto asked wearily. It had taken the better part of his day for him and his clones to figure out what the trick was to popping the ball, and what frustrated the blonde even further was that his new friend was the one who had finally helped him understand why the balloon wasn't popping. Turned out spinning his chakra in one way wasn't enough. Basically he had to spin in many directions to make the water in the ball turbulent enough to pop the balloon. It's like this, kid, I'm an inventor. I've spent my life figuring out the ways of the world through my brains. I've invented things that have never been seen by man in this time. My dream is to bring our world into the future, Kira said as he lounged on edge. But here's the problem, I've got nothing to start with. I'm just a man with a dream that people think is crazy. Your looks may have something to do with it, Naruto thought but stayed silent. But I can't create without proper materials. You say these people you know are the best smiths that you know. Can you prove it? Naruto pulled his hyper gloves from his belt and handed them to Kira. Kira looked at the gloves in amazement. This workmanship is amazing. Such a sleek design, and this metal is by no means low grade. It can channel chakra too. Really? Amazing, Kira whispered as he turned the gloves over in his hands. I can't use chakra, but I'll take your word for it. Kira handed the gloves back to the boy who clipped them on his belt before sighing. So you're really going to come with me? I don't know how Ero-Sennin will take it, but I don't see a problem. Kid, I can see a bright future if we stick together. Kira grinned into the dark orange sky. Naruto scratched his head in exasperation. This guy is crazy, but you gotta admit he sure knows his stuff. Naruto thought as he hugged his knees. He had seen one of Kira's inventions in action. Those scuffed-up shoes Kira was wearing actually allowed the guy to run up the wall and speed across rooftops like a ninja. It had something to do with gyrosculls or whatever it was called. Whatever it was, Naruto knew Kira wasn't using chakra because during his 2 weeks of personal training, sensing chakra was one of the skills he had picked up, and Kira hadn't used a sliver of the energy when scaling the wall. The man wasn't lying about not being able to use chakra. What about your job here? I don't really like working there. I have no real connections here, so it's not like anyone will miss me, Kira said, shrugging. Well, let's break the news to my teacher. I wonder how he will take it. It turns out it was easier than Naruto expected. Once he met up with Jiraiya, the boy proved he had completed the first step, which caused Jiraiya to nearly have a heart attack. Though when Naruto explained about the clones, Jiraiya nearly smacked himself for not thinking of that idea. When Kira was introduced to Jiraiya, the man literally bowed to the Sannin. When asked why from Naruto, Kira merely looked at Naruto with a straight face and simply stated, Aika Aika. Jiraiya immediately took a liking to the young man, while Naruto's sweat dropped over the idea that his new friend was a pervert. After staying in the town for one night and picking up Kira's pack, the three were once again on the road. It had been 3 days since the group left the town, and in Naruto's hand was a rubber ball which he and about 20 other blondes were yelling obscenities at. The second step was power, and apparently the piece of rubber in Naruto's hands didn't think he had enough power. Fuck you, rubber ball. I will blow you apart. Your mom. Jiraiya's sweat dropped at that last comment made by a clone and rubbed his temples. He felt proud that his unofficial apprentice was plowing through learning the Rasengan, but had told the kid not to use too many clones or he would hurt himself. Naruto assured him that he knew what to do, but hearing so many of the boys' voices was irking him. Naruto, shut up. Jiraiya yelled as Kira chuckled to the side. What did I tell you last time? To focus my power on one point, the original replied. But it's still freaking hard. I mean, all we've been able to do is get a hole in it. Jiraiya sighed and motioned him over. Give me your hand. Naruto complied and Jiraiya drew a swirl on the boy's right palm. Let this be your focus spot. If you can do that, it will be easier. Naruto looked at the mark on his hand before nodding with a new conviction. He dispelled his clones 2 at a time and felt the influx of info in his mind. After taking a few deep breaths from the rush of memories and time, Naruto held his hand up and started to focus. Jiraiya sighed happily at the silence and continued on while Kira followed, while looking behind his shoulder to see the blonde boy with his back to them. So you think your mark will help him? Kira asked. Who knows, all I know is that I'm happy for the peace and Kadash. Jiraiya was cut off as a loud boom was heard and a blonde blur flew past them. Jiraiya looked at the boy sprawled on the ground in front of them, who was twitching uncomfortably. Well, step 2 complete. But looks like he knocked himself out. The kid gonna be okay? Oh, don't worry, he is fine, just a bit hard-headed. That's what I'm slightly worried about, Kira said, shaking his head. Jiraiya lugged the boy onto his back, who gave a moan of pain, and they were on their way once more. Naruto was lying on his bed with a balloon filled with air in his hand. Around him was about 5 or 6 clones with balloons in their hands. There was an occasional pop as a clone would pop their balloon with a curse before blowing up another to try again. Yesterday he had completed the second step, and this morning he could now do it without blowing his feet from under him. Now he was on step 3, and this one was the hardest. He needed to max out the rotation and power and keep it all contained in a shell. If he could make that shell perfect, then the balloon wouldn't pop. Suffice to say, his room was littered with busted latex rubber. Kira had left the two earlier to go to one of the stores to stock up on items. Jiraiya, on the other hand, had been distracted by a pretty girl and made Naruto take their things into the room. Bastard, Naruto thought with a growl. The balloon popped in the boy's hand and Naruto huffed in annoyance. What an annoying technique. A knock on the door made Naruto stop reaching for another balloon and look up. Hey, I bet Erosenin must have struck out, huh Ichi? Naruto grinned. The clone laughed lightly and dropped from the ceiling he was stuck to. The other clones all shared a laugh before going back to their tasks. So did she slap you for being a perv Erosenin? What greeted Naruto wasn't the swollen face of his teacher. Instead Naruto was staring into the red orbs of the famed doujutsu, the Sharingan. Naruto whispered. Suki. No, it can't be. This is a male, so this guy must be. Hello Naruto-kun. Why don't you come outside? The mysterious man said. Naruto nodded numbly before looking behind his shoulder. His clones looked at one another before slowly heading to the window. They needed to find Jiraiya. Naruto walked out of the door and closed it quietly before studying the two people in front of him. Both men wore long black cloaks with red clouds adorning them. The one that had spoken looked like an older version of Suki when she still had that illusion that made her Sasuke. He was obviously older and looked like his face had permanent tear grooves. His partner, however, was a much more terrifying-looking person. He looked like a human and shark hybrid. He had blue skin and his eyes were bulging out of his head. Naruto shuddered. So this is the Kyuubi brat? Doesn't look like much, the blue-skinned man said with a viscous grin. Maybe I should cut off his legs so he can't run. Itachi. No, Kisame. If you cut him he may go into shock and we can't have that, Itachi stated back calmly. Naruto gasped audibly and gulped. They knew about Kyuubi. What did they want with the Kyuubi no Kitsune? Now Naruto-kun, it would be in your interest to come with us. Who are you guys? That's not really any of your concern, brat, Kisame sneered. Well, I ain't going anywhere if you guys aren't going to tell me anything, so if you would be so kind to, how to say this, go away, Naruto said. Kisame chuckled darkly. I think this kid needs to be taught a lesson, Itachi. Maybe I can knock him around a bit. Itachi narrowed his red orbs and opened his mouth to speak. However, he was cut off by a scream from down the hall. Itachi! Everyone turned to the source of the voice and Naruto's eyebrows raised in surprise. There stood Suki in all her righteousness. Her own Sharingan was spinning with fury as she stared at her brother. Hey, that person looks familiar, is she related to you? Itachi said nothing. He was too surprised over the fact that her once little brother had reverted back to being a girl. Something must have happened. Sasuke, no Suki, Itachi whispered. The Uchiha glanced at Naruto, who was staring at his teammate. Was it the blonde's doing? Suki, what are you doing here? Naruto screamed out. These guys looked strong, amazingly strong, and Naruto wasn't sure that even with the two of them, him and Suki might not make it. Deciding to pull out an unfinished technique from his 2-week training session, Naruto trained his eyes on the two men in cloaks. Scan! Naruto whispered quickly. His technique involved him to basically saturate the air around him in chakra slowly as to not raise suspicion, then send out a few quick pulses of chakra after. The pulses would react off an enemy's chakra signature and pulse along the chakra-infused air till it got back to him. The stronger the enemy was, then the stronger the recoil from the chakra pulse. It was still incomplete since the original scan allowed a person to have a readout of more specific things and even techniques, but for now this would have to do. Naruto waited for the chakra pulse to come back, and not a second later he felt himself about to vomit. These guys are monsters, Naruto thought, petrified. The recoil from the pulse was so powerful that he felt his whole body tremble. Suki and him were not ready for these guys. I've waited for this. I've hated you. I've detested you. I've lived to kill you, Suki spat. She held her left hand up and a Chidori started to form. It grew in power and chirping started to echo in the hall. My whole life has led to this moment. And now I will avenge my family. You will die, Itachi. Suki screamed as she shot down the corridor, dragging her hand behind her and created a large groove in the wall. Itachi said nothing as he watched his little sister careen towards him with her fist covered in lightning chakra. As Suki screamed and was about to plunge her fist into her brother, Itachi deftly flicked her hand into the wall where the girl's technique caused a hole to form through the next 5 walls. Chidori. Interesting, Itachi murmured as Suki glared at him defiantly. With a quick twist, Suki's wrist was snapped and she screamed out. Itachi merely threw her aside before turning to a frozen Naruto once more. You will come with us now. No. Suki groaned as she pushed herself up. I'm not done yet. This is my chance. I will get my revenge today. Itachi sighed before turning to his sister once more. A kunai slid from his sleeve. It seems he would have to pin her down. He walked over and picked up the injured girl before slamming her into a wall. Suki let out a cry of pain before she started to struggle once more. You are still weak, dear sister. Do you not have enough hate? Did you not loathe me enough? Itachi said quietly, his Sharingan starting to form a different shape. Hate me. Hate me now as I stab into you like I stabbed into our parents. Itachi's hand came down and Suki pushed against his arm futilely. Suki couldn't resist herself as she stared into the eyes of Itachi. The eyes that slowly turned into the Mangekyo Sharingan. Tsukio dash. Henge. Clang. Two pairs of Sharingan eyes widened as a blonde and orange shape stood between them. Naruto stood in the middle of Suki and Itachi, deflecting the blade in a way that made both pairs of eyes widen. Naruto's right hand had stopped the blade dead in its tracks, the kunai scraping against the now metal arm the boy wielded. Itachi raised an eyebrow in confusion and slight wonder as Suki stared at her teammate. Naruto grunted and pushed the kunai off his arm before lashing out. Itachi hopped away agilely and Suki dropped to the floor. Naruto? Suki asked. Naruto grunted before he coughed violently. He could feel some blood coming from his mouth. I wasn't ready to use this, but I panicked and could only think of this way to deflect that kunai from close up. My kunai work against his would have ended up with me getting stabbed, so this was all I could think of, Naruto explained as he coughed again. What's wrong? Why are you bleeding? Suki asked. Itachi stayed silent and watched. Hey, what's up with that brat's arm? It wasn't metal a second ago, right? Kisame said. He didn't really care that Naruto went to save his teammate. The two were toast anyways. Itachi merely stayed silent and studied Naruto's right arm with his eyes. Naruto groaned and got into a loose fighting stance. His whole body felt like it was being ripped apart. This is going to be a pain, the boy groaned before clenching his fists and glaring at the two people in front of him. Naruto, move. Suki hissed out as she struggled to push herself up. This is my fight and I don't need you to do this for me. Naruto grunted and held his metal arm out in front of her. Remember what I told you in Nami? Naruto whispered behind him. Suki blinked in confusion before she recalled his words. Well, if that's the case, I could always help you. Naruto's words rang in Suki's head. Yeah, well, we are teammates and I guess we'll be on this team for a long time. Why not help each other out? You said you'd help me. If that is so, then help me. Suki yelled harshly as she finally pushed herself up. He is right in front of me. All my anger, all my questions. This is my chance to finally achieve my ambition. Itachi. Suki pointed at the man with her good arm. Tell me why. Tell me, why did you kill everyone? Why did you wipe out our clan? Itachi stared at the screaming girl impassively before looking once more to Naruto, who was grimacing in discomfort. Kisame, apprehend young Uzumaki. I shall deal with my sister, Itachi stated calmly. Kisame grinned eerily. Finally some action. Naruto gulped and stood his ground as the shark man stepped head forward. Suddenly the blue-skinned shinobi was in Naruto's guard and the boy's eyes widened in shock. Wadash! Naruto didn't finish his outburst as he was elbowed in the stomach and choked on the bile that rose in his throat. The boy was suddenly kicked away before his body could react to the hit to his gut. Naruto crashed into a wall and groaned as his eyes flickered open and close. Naruto! Suki yelled as she rushed towards him. Naruto pushed himself up with a low moan. Kisame was once again in the boy's face and smashed an open palm against his face and sent Naruto to the floor. Naruto felt his body bounce from the impact and he landed in a heap on the ground. Man, kid, I thought you had a little more fight in ya, Kisame said, clearly disappointed. Naruto growled lowly through the haze before shooting back up and tried to slam his metal fist into Kisame's face. Kisame sidestepped lazily and once Naruto landed he blurred from view. The boy appeared behind the shark man and was about to throw his non-metal fist out for a shotgun. Kisame grunted before hefting the large object on his back and slamming it into the genin. Naruto cried out in pain and bounced across the ground. Naruto felt a sudden rushing sensation in his body and to his morbid shock his right arm turned back to normal in a puff of smoke and his fist lost all of its chakra. In fact, Naruto didn't feel any chakra going through his body at the moment. How will you look at that? Looks like once Samahata took all your chakra, your little trick goes bye-bye, Kisame grinned. Naruto looked from Kisame to his arm as he came to a startling realization. If I have no chakra, my transformations are cancelled, even the body-changing ones. But how? Naruto thought as he slowly lost consciousness. His last vision was of Suki rushing towards him and a large toad blocking her from the sharkskin sword that was heading towards her. Damn it, Suki, why did you come here? Why now? That's it for part 4. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.